from 4 p.m. on GB News.
The Immigration Minister calls the situation in Kent intolerable after a firebomb attack on a migrant processing centre in Dover.
A very good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Monday, the 31st of October. Well, a happy Halloween and welcome to Breakfast on GB News this morning with Stephen and Rosie.
Here's what's leading the news for you today. The Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, has been to Dover following a firebomb attack on a Border Force migrant centre. Kent police have confirmed 2 people were injured in the attack.
The government's under pressure to open investigation into allegations that Liz Truss's phone was hacked when she was the Foreign Secretary. Now, private messages, including about the war in Ukraine, reportedly fell into foreign hands.
And Prince Harry may return to the UK in the new year to promote his controversial memoir, which will be published in January. It comes amid reports that he will not spend Christmas with his family over here.
Well, please do get in touch, particularly if you're doing anything unusual or spooky for Halloween.
Yes.
You can email us, you know the email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or drop us a tweet at gbnews.
Now, Kent police are continuing their investigation into attack on the Border Force migrant centre yesterday.
Petrol bombs were thrown at the facility from a car, with the suspect later being found dead nearby.
Now, the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, went to Dover and Manston yesterday. Now, Manston is the place where we had that exclusive report from our Home and Security editor, Mark White, on Saturday after he spoke to a whistleblower saying the place was absolutely overcrowded, and yet the people from Dover have been sent to Manston, so it's now even more overcrowded. Robert Jenrick himself is calling it intolerable.
Yeah, over 1,000 people crossed the channel yesterday. Well, let's find out a little bit more about the political ramifications of this. Joining us now in the studio is the chair of the Women in Think Tanks Forum, Phoebe Arstana-Wakefield. Thank you very much for your time. This is the ever-ending headache for the government, and now, with the events that's happened over the weekend, there is a new profound seriousness that this needs sorting.
Yes, I mean, I do think that the government has some breathing room on this. Immigration is an issue that has really slipped for voters in salience. Really what's keeping the electorate up at night at the moment is the economy, not immigration, and that's certainly true, I think, also of new Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. I think what we've seen in the past few years is a Home Office that is focused on security and on deterrence when it comes with dealing with small boat crossings. And actually, it hasn't really worked. You know, we've seen the numbers go up and up and up. All those people having their pain and desperation exploited by criminal gangs. And security and deterrence hasn't really worked to break the back of those gangs. New Home Secretary Suella Braverman, who may not be in post for that long, is also speaking about security and deterrence. And perhaps actually it would be good to see some new solutions looked at by the Home Secretary and by the government.
But when it comes to the Home Secretary, it beggars belief what she's done, in the sense that, as we were reporting on Saturday, Manston is hugely overcrowded, and it's only meant to hold people for 24 hours. Some have been there for weeks and weeks and weeks. There's outbreaks of disease there and everything. It's an horrific situation. And yet the people who were being held in Dover have been sent there.
It just doesn't make any sense, does it? As you say, outbreaks of disease, things like diphtheria, it's completely shocking, and that's the result of the decisions that the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, took directly. There's a high human cost to this, and it also actually speaks of a completely broken system, you know, processing delays, going huge backlogs. Why isn't the system working properly? There needs to be a proper investigation.
And what the immediate short-term solutions are, because it seems as though, for the government, housing these people in hotels was deeply unpopular. So the solution has been, OK, we won't do hotels. We'll just put them all here with no thought of which to think maybe we should build new accommodation in which to look after these people while they're here in the UK.
It's all very short-term thinking, isn't it? Lots of sort of stop gaps and like plaster fixes, but no long-term improvements. Perhaps the government thinks that its programme being quite hard-lined on immigration, on illegal immigration, talking a lot about security is actually going to get them somewhere. But the truth is they've been doing that for some years. That's what Priti Patel, previous Home Secretary, was talking about, and it hasn't really gotten them anywhere.
No, but when the issue seems to be when they try to do something like the Rwanda flights, which actually would have, you presume, would have been a pretty good deterrent for a lot of people, it just gets blocked. I mean, there's a political will, but then there's legal problems, legal intervention in getting any of it through.
There were legal problems with the Rwanda flights. I think that's something that experts said would be an issue from the very beginning. I think, and actually there's no real evidence that the Rwanda flights would have acted as a deterrent particularly at all. That's really nothing more than a guess. I suspect the real solution here lies with expanding safe and legal routes to reach the UK, and also, actually, with better cooperation with our international allies. You know, can we work more closely with the French to deal with these criminal gangs?
There have been discussions with the French over the last couple of days, apparently, haven't there? Do you think that's going to take us anywhere?
Well, it's something that I'd like to see the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister take really seriously. You know, people have been saying for some time that some of our diplomatic relationships, such as with our close neighbours like France, have actually really deteriorated over the past couple of years. Let's strengthen those, you know, let's improve those bonds, and we can work together to fix these security problems that torment us all.
When you're talking about security, how much will the conduct of Suella Braverman actually impact her ability to just get on with the day-to-day job?
It may well be that she actually doesn't really last out the week. In terms of her conduct, Rishi Sunak is already under fire for appointing her after a security breach led her to resign or be fired. And now again with her decision, which has led to the overcrowding. It is actually, I think, though, quite politically difficult for Rishi Sunak. On the one hand, you know, with her decision that led to the overcrowding, there's now talk of there possibly being a class action lawsuit. You could see that's something that drags out over a really long period of time. Lots of negative headlines for the government. On the other hand, if Rishi Sunak does remove her, you know, he appointed her to that position as a sort of, you know, olive branch to the ERG, a influential, quite rebellious and powerful faction within the Conservative Party of MPs, the European Research Group. If he does remove her, that could be quite difficult for party management. It's a difficult political situation that he finds himself in.
But also difficult for the markets and everything else that's going on, because it then harks back to a real sense of insecurity if you can't keep someone in the job for more than a week.
Yeah, that's the thing. Rishi Sunak wants to draw a line firmly between himself and his predecessor, Liz Truss, whose government was characterised by chaos, economic chaos, lots of ministers in and out. He wants to project calm and confidence, unity and stability. And he can't do that with a divided party. Voters don't vote for divided parties, and a general election is on its way. OK,
Phoebe, really good to see you as always. Thanks very much indeed. Now, new reports suggest that the former Prime Minister, Liz Truss's phone was hacked while she was Foreign Secretary.
Well, the allegations suggest agents working for Russia were responsible, and the hack was discovered during the leadership campaign over the summer, but the information was suppressed.
Well, let's talk to Philip Ingram, former Senior Intelligence Officer. Morning to you, Philip. What do you make of all of this?
Well, I'm shocked but not surprised. The fact that Liz Truss's phone was on a list that could be hacked by foreign intelligence services, and we don't know it was the Russians, along with a large number of others, including Keir Starmer's, was reported by the Mail on Sunday on the 2nd of October, and I commented in that.
You say you're not surprised. Why is that? Is it because the right procedures weren't followed? Was it naivety? How was this allowed to happen?
Well, mobile devices, and it came to light with the murder of Jamal Khashoggi by the Saudis in the Saudi embassy in Turkey. That you're getting spyware onto mobile devices is extremely easy, and that was the Pegasus spyware by the Israeli company NSO. And to get that spyware onto a mobile device, you just need to send a message. The recipient doesn't need to open the message, doesn't need to look at anything, doesn't need to click at any links. So mobile devices, by their very nature, are inherently easy for those that have got the resources to hack them and to gain access to all of the information that's being processed on them. The Israelis clearly have it, and so do Middle Eastern countries. The Russians and Chinese will have their own versions of this Pegasus software. So as soon as someone's mobile telephone and personal mobile telephone is available out for these organizations, then I think they have to assume that it could be hacked.
What about, I mean, obviously there's an argument to say, well, they need to stop using their phones for anything which is remotely sensitive. That's easier said than done in 2022, let's be honest. Where are we in terms of actually properly secure devices? There must be companies out there building devices which are much more resilient than the ordinary ones we all buy.
Oh, there are. There are much more secure devices, and they're devices that government communications headquarters will issue to senior politicians for them to use for official business that are more secure. You're never going to get anything that is completely secure. That's a complete fallacy, unless you're at your desktop and you've got a completely isolated network. And the issue is not necessarily where people are discussing things that are classified. It's highly unusual that even senior politicians are going to discuss things that are properly classified secret or anything like that. But actually, a senior decision maker's opinion and their thoughts on something, their private thoughts on something with colleagues as they're discussing it, as to what their position might be whenever an issue is being debated, is invaluable to a hostile intelligence service, because that gives intent. And that's something that then the intelligence services can try and manipulate, either in the messaging that they're sending out and trying to influence those that are opposing something that is being discussed, or to try and tweak things into the press to make things blow up in a way that would make it embarrassing. And the reason why it didn't come out, I don't really know. I can merely speculate it was down to the Conservative Party leadership contest, but also then getting into the death of Her Majesty. And whenever Her Majesty died and we got into that period of mourning, no business came out of government at all. And then we got into the Liz Truss lasting, was it hours, days, certainly not weeks and months as Prime Minister.
Okay. Philip, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much.
Right now it's 12 minutes past 6. Now, convenience shops across the country have been giving families the chance to buy a basket of groceries worth £10 for just a single penny. Why? Of course, to help out during the rising cost of living.
Well, the scheme has been run in conjunction with the grocery delivery app Snappy Shopper, and 13,000 bundles have been sold this month already.
Well, our Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley found out more.
A bag full of food and drink essentials at the price of just a penny. A lifeline for customers of Note's family-run convenience store in Batley. At a time when people across the country are choosing between heating and eating, shopkeepers like Serge are quite literally helping to put food on the table.
The family's had the store for 46 years. I've been actively working in this shop for about 23 years. And since COVID, we've actually seen a lot of people struggling, reaching out to convenience stores, reaching out to local stores more and more, community. And with us being a community store, we've had to step up our game. Recently, due to the cost of living crisis, we've seen a lot of people struggling to pay the food bills. So when we teamed up with Snappy Shopper, we just thought it was a really good thing that, what they're coming out with. Last week we did another penny bundle, which was our biggest ever offer we've done in the store in 47 years. We did about £10 worth of groceries, and we sold it for a penny through our delivery service, and we delivered it to the door. We did over 200 in 3 days, but I do know that Snappy Shopper did well over 10,000 bags up and down the country.
The scheme works through the Snappy Shopper delivery app, and it's helped to keep the business running.
It's helping us grow our sales, which we need to do to help with the rising costs we've incurred with the electricity going up, food prices are going up, gas bills are going up. for ourselves, not as an individual. So we have to find more income coming in because we were just barely, we were surviving prior to all the cost of living crisis. But with the cost of living crisis up, we need to do more to stand still. My saying is we're having to run just to stand still.
For Snappy Shopper, community is at the heart of the offer.
We're enabling that retailer via Snappy Shopper to grow their business through delivery, but equally we want to support that retailer's pillar in the community.
A food delivery service that's delivering for the community in a cost of living crisis. Anna Riley, GB News, Batley.
Well, I mean, it's incredibly generous, actually, isn't it? That 10 quid's worth of shopping for a penny. I mean, can you believe it? If you've used that, actually, and if you certainly, but particularly if you're up in Batley or use one of the convenience stores that are running that, let us know, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Right now, 6:15. Let's bring you up to date with the other stories making headlines today. And Kent police have confirmed a man was found dead at a nearby petrol station following an arson attack at a migrant processing centre in Dover. It's after a man drove up to the facility and threw several homemade devices which had fireworks attached to them inside. A Reuters photographer who witnessed the incident says the man then drove to a nearby petrol station where he claimed his own life.
More than 100 charities are urging the Home Secretary to create safer routes for refugees to the UK and to tackle the backlog in asylum claims. It says almost 1,000 migrants arrived in the UK after crossing the Channel on Saturday. Earlier this month, Suella Braverman said those who make the journey will face a ban from claiming asylum.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has beaten Jair Bolsonaro in the Brazilian presidential election. Lula narrowly defeated his opponent with a 50.9% share of the votes against 49.1%. Bolsonaro has not yet conceded his defeat.
Staff at the Co-op will be able to take paid time off for fertility treatments. A new policy will provide paid leave for the retailer's employees to attend medical appointments for treatments, including people using a surrogate. It also includes partners that want to accompany those going to appointments. Now, you're going to spend your Halloween watching a scary movie. I'm not. I'm going out for dinner. Actually, I'm not very good with scary movies. I've got to be honest. Bad dreams.
Watching one by yourself is absolute torture. I would really be lights on going back to my bedroom after watching a scary movie. If you're with someone else and you can kind of laugh through those real suspense moments, I think it's all right.
Yeah, maybe.
But it wouldn't be my top choice of film.
I have really vivid dreams anyway. I'm one of those very vivid dreamers, so it's just like, ooh, doesn't do me any good. Anyway, if you like your classics, then maybe you want to get involved in this auction, because a collection is going up for auction today. There's a Betamax, do you remember that? A Betamax version of Halloween itself, the 1978 movie, with its original wrapping, and it's expected to go for £15,000. And a sealed VHS of Jaws from /75, is it that old? Wow. Is also expected to go for £15,000. You're paying 15 grand for a VHS of Jaws. I mean, just because it's still got its plastic wrap on.
Yeah, you wouldn't really want to take the wrapper off to play it, would you?
No, you could never play it. No, it costs you £15,000 to watch it.
It says the auction's stacked with every horror title everyone could want, assuming that we'd all want that. I've been watching The Watcher on Netflix.
Oh, is that good?
Terrifying. And it's one of those ones where it starts, opening title says this is based on a true story, and it is. And the whole way through, you're thinking, this is so vile and abhorrent, what happened to this family. And you're just trying to tread on, well, how much of this really did happen or didn't? And a lot of it does ring true, which is awful. But I recommend it. But yeah, watch it with a friend.
This lot, right, in Dallas, the Heritage Auction place in Dallas, Texas, says that they've got all the classics, right, including Gremlins. Gremlins isn't a horror movie, it's a kids' movie. What are you talking about? That isn't scary. Anyway, even I've seen Gremlins. Anyway, let us know if you've got any scary movies tipped up, ready to go. Let us know if you're watching them on VHS. I'd be very surprised in this day and age if you've got a tape machine that still works.
Don't go anywhere. After the break, Prince Harry could return to the UK to promote his new memoir, but not to spend Christmas with his family. Well, the royal and showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield will bring us the latest live from LA after the weather.
Well, the UK is shaping up like this today. Dry for many with sunny spells across the country, but sadly wet and windy in the west. Here are the details.
Well, starting off in the southwest, it's going to be calm around lunchtime with bursts of sunshine. Later, some rain is going to arrive and carry on late into the evening.
Well, in the southeast, it's going to be drier with some fine clouds setting in the afternoon. We also expect warmer temperatures again, at least for this time of year.
Now, in Wales, there's potentially going to be the odd shower here and there, but it should be mostly fine and dry. That warm spell will last throughout the morning and into the afternoon.
Moving on to the Midlands for you, plenty of fine weather actually, 1 or 2 sunny breaks as well. Again, unseasonably warm, though temperatures not quite as high as we saw over the weekend.
It's a similar picture for the northeast of England, with sunny spells for much of the day. It's going to get a little bit blustery at times, but thankfully will still be warm for those out and about.
Now, heavy rain will have pushed in across western parts of Scotland by mid-morning. It's going to be drier further east, albeit with some showers, before the persistent rain arrives a little bit later on.
Now, meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, expect a wet and windy day. The rain's going to be heavy at times, leading to the risk of localised flooding, as well as some difficult driving conditions.
So, for most, the rain will push eastwards across the UK, further showery rain feeding in from the south. And that's how your weather's looking today.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Welcome back, 23 minutes past 6. Now, still to come on Breakfast this morning, universities are facing a multi-million-pound legal action from students who they say their education was disrupted by COVID. At 6:45, we're going to speak to a recent graduate who went viral after protesting her own graduation with a sign saying, "I want a refund."
At 7:10, we're going to speak to the former head of the British Army, Lord Richard Dannett, who's accused the government of ill discipline over its alleged security breaches.
Now, please do get in touch in all the usual ways. We're looking for, really, spooky films.
Spooky films, Halloween pictures, or anything Halloween related this morning.
Are you trick-or-treating or not?
Oh, yeah, do you like all of that? As long as you don't do the trick part. You know, that's always a bit...
So just treating.
Just treat.
GB Views at gbnews.uk or tweet us too at GB News. Prince Harry may return to the UK to promote his upcoming book, released this January.
Now, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex aren't expected to spend Christmas with the royals. Relations are said to be at rock bottom ahead of the release of what is going to be a controversial book.
Well, showbiz reporter Kinsey Schofield joins us now to discuss all. A very good morning to you. This book, there has been so much publicity around it. Does Harry actually need to come here to do a tour to promote it?
I would say no. I would say that we have created a monster with this, with the amount of press we're giving this book. But contractually, he likely has promised his publishers that he will do some PR for the book. And I'm thinking it's like the usual suspects. I think you might see him sit down with Hoda at NBC in America. You might see him sit down with James Corden again. Maybe even an interview with Meghan on her podcast. But I don't think he necessarily needs to do a lot of traveling, and I think he in fact would do more of speaking engagements, because I think that that's the direction he's going in. But you know, a lot of new developments over the weekend. We found out that he did this book because he was tired of trying to please his family, is what the Telegraph said. And then the Sun reporting that over the summer he contacted his friends and ex-girlfriends asking them if they would feel comfortable participating in the book, and the majority of them, you know, rejected the idea because they'd spent their life in his world being told by him not to talk to the press.
Well, exactly so. I mean, it would be absolutely remarkable if he did come over here to do anything on it, because, I mean, he would be guaranteed a very negative reception, wouldn't he?
I mean, you would know better than I would. I would assume so. I think a lot of people are disappointed in Prince Harry, and it depends on what's inside this book. Now, sources told the Telegraph that he does not mean to harm his family. That was not his intention, but he does blame his father for this pain he feels inside. That, you know, he talked about it with Oprah in the Me You Can't See documentary, and he's going to focus a lot on that.
Who is he marketing this book towards? Because, you know, we've talked about it before on this programme. The optics of how they manage their move to America and their break from the royal family haven't actually won them as many fans as perhaps they thought they would.
Well, I do think that's a really good point. I do think that they are marketing this book towards Americans, and that's why I'm not convinced that there will be a tour in the UK, a book tour, because I really think that he's trying to convince people here in America, you know, I'm an expert. You should hire me. You should let me be the CFO or whatever he is for these, you know, startups in San Francisco. I think he's doing it to elevate himself and to brand himself in the States.
I mean, it's interesting as well that we now have been told he's not coming to the UK to spend Christmas with his family, which is perhaps a little bit of a surprise in that, of course, we now have the King, but we also know that the King very much does want to build bridges.
Well, he's on the naughty list, Stephen. I mean, I think, you know, if you're going to come home and you're going to get coal in your stocking, I'm not going to come either. But I think that he's not on good terms with everybody, and he simply just doesn't want to have to face, you know, the truth, face some tough questions. And I think everybody dealt with him differently during the funeral because they wanted to honor the Queen. And so the next time he comes home to visit, he's going to have some tough conversations.
Kinsey, thank you very much for talking us through it. The book, which you've heard so much about, Spare, that will be out in the new year. Kinsey, appreciate your time.
Yeah, I won't be reading it. I'll tell you that for nothing. But plenty of people will. I don't think it'll have particularly good sales over here, but I think it'll do well in America.
In the US.
Very well in America. I wouldn't touch it.
Not for you.
But no, I just don't want to hear. You know, and partly because it's about whether it might be the royal family, but it's still a family. And so you don't air your dirty laundry in public, as my lot would say. You don't do it, do you?
It's so much of what's been trailed about the book is so sour, isn't it? And hurt and pain. And you might wonder, you know, if you were motivated to really unite the family and for harmony, then a book that tells all would be the worst thing you could do.
Yes, absolutely. But anyway, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Don't go anywhere, because coming up in just a few minutes, we're taking you through the papers with Dawn Neeson and Christopher Biggett.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
It's 6:30 morning to you. Let's bring you up to date with some of the headlines today. And Kent police have confirmed a man has been found dead at a petrol station following an arson attack at a migrant processing centre in Dover. It's after a man drew up to the facility and threw homemade devices which had fireworks attached to them. Now, there was a Reuters photographer who witnessed the incident. He says the man then drove to a petrol station where he took his own life.
Now, as the new Prime Minister begins his first full week in office, pressure's mounting over his snub of the upcoming climate summit. Now, according to reports, he's considering a U-turn on his decision not to attend COP27 in Egypt next week. His earlier stance that he must focus on domestic challenges sparked a significant backlash among the Tory party.
Political decision-making during the coronavirus pandemic will be in focus during the second preliminary hearing of the COVID inquiry. More details are expected to emerge on how decisions were made during the period with restrictions. Evidence sessions will begin next year.
Well, it's time now to go through the papers. Joining us in the studio to do that is the former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson and the actor Christopher Biggins. A very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Why don't we kick off, shall we, Biggins, with the front page of The Guardian. And ministers have been accused, and we've mentioned it on the programme already, of having this sort of Wild West attitude to national security.
Well, I know. I mean, this is the allegations that, of course, Truss's phone was hacked by the Russians. And this is, you know, a serious breach of security. I don't know what she was probably talking about. What do you think? I mean,
Dread to think.
No, exactly. You know, what she was going to wear the following day, what shoe she was going to wear or something, you know. But anyway, I think it is a serious thing because they're saying that they think that people are using their devices for private reasons. And I think what they should do is they should have probably a work mobile. But I mean, I think it's impossible to curb this, though, isn't it?
Well, this is technologically, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah,
Anything you do on your phone is open to...
Absolutely. I mean, you know, a lot of people have been hacked over the years and got a lot of money back from it.
Yeah. Were you ever hacked in that scandal?
Possibly.
Oh, there you go, you see. But it's very... This is the problem. It's very easily done.
It is. And, of course, the trouble is now we've got so many security on our own financial things, you know, people hacking us about money. And, you know, you don't know what to believe. You know, you get these emails and texts from people, and you think, I'm going to ignore it. Then, of course, you get into trouble with people who really are trying to get money from you to pay for things.
How much of this, though, The Guardian does point at this, how much of it is about cabinet culture and people just either being naive or not following proper procedure?
Well, I think naive is a very good word. I mean, I think that's the question, you know, how up are you in these sort of things? I mean, I think the problem is we rely on all these things so much that it's bound to happen. You know, people are bound to, because it's easy. You know, even we on this panel could do something, could do some hacking.
Oh, no.
If we wanted to.
I don't think I'm going to.
I tell you what, it'd be interesting. It would be very interesting. Dawn, can we have a look at COP27 in the Telegraph?
Yes, if we absolutely have to.
Yeah, well, look, when we talked about this yesterday, we just got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails from our viewers and listeners saying, no, we shouldn't be going to... Rishi Sunak should not be going to COP27. Focus on what's happening at home.
And this is the reason that Rishi Sunak has said that, indeed, he's not going and has advised our King Charles not to go either. It's being held in Sharm el-Sheikh, and it's where the great and the good get together, often flying in on their private jets, to talk about what they are going to do to save the planet, as I said, while flying on their private jets. And then they come away and issue this diktat that none of us can have our 2-week holiday in Spain because we are destroying the planet. And we saw this with COP26 in Glasgow, didn't we? Where, I mean, you know, not only flying in on private jets, but Biden and his huge motorcade turning up, and then the hilarious fact that, you know, they were the delegates at COP26 were using electric cars, but they didn't have enough charging points to charge the electric cars, so they had to ship in a load of generators to fire the electric cars up.
To burn the diesel to power the
yeah,
cars.
no, absolutely, Stephen. So, I mean, I think, you know, Rishi Sunak does have a point here. There is now some debate about whether he might go or not, and as other people have pointed out, well, ministers are going to attend the World Cup.
Rumours Boris Johnson's going to go to COP.
Well, I mean, you know, to be fair to Boris Johnson, he has had a green agenda from day one, hasn't he? Possibly something to do with his wife, and Stanley Johnson, his dad, has always been very, very involved in climate change and getting that message across. So, you know, there's nothing stopping him going, Boris Johnson. But I think Rishi Sunak's point is, like, I think people expect me to stay here and sort out the economic and the financial crisis and the pressures, the domestic pressures on people here. And it does look a bit wrong font, so many all gathering in one place when, as we all learned during lockdown, a phone call can do the job just as well.
And Zoom, too. I mean, they could all Zoom.
Yeah.
You know, I think there is a point about not going. I really do, because I think it's, you know, it's so easily resolved with technology again.
Absolutely, yeah. Provided you don't get your phone hacked, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they could hack that, because, I mean, it's good. I mean, they never seem to come out with anything anyway.
No, you're right.
I don't know. You may disagree with us. Let us know if you do. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Should we look in the Metro, Biggins? A third of public sector staff to leave over pay.
Yes, I mean, 1.8 million expected to leave because they want a pay rise. But everybody wants a pay rise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really economic problem, I think. You know, there's so much that I don't know where we stop. I mean, because, you know, there are strikes going on. I mean, do we suddenly borrow a huge amount of money to pay everybody? I mean, it's a very difficult thing. And, you know, I think saying that they're all going to leave is fine, but then I think there are other people who will come in and take those jobs.
Yeah, well, yeah. Where are they going to go? If they've got a cost, if they're struggling with money, what are they going to do?
Exactly. What other jobs are there for them? I mean, it's a real problem, and everybody wants to have money in the bank to pay all the bills and things, but I don't think the answer is leaving the job. No. I think, you know, I mean, I know people have to be strong and we have to do this thing, but it worries me that we're doing too much of it.
The trouble is, it's a bitter pill which needs to be taken, which is sort of easier for us to say because we're not struggling to heat or eat.
No.
Isn't it? That's the problem, and I know people sometimes get annoyed with this, and I understand why. But the problem is, if you give everyone an inflation levelling pay rise, then all that does is push up inflation.
I know.
Which is, then we're back where we started.
But this is what started back in the 70s with the winter of discontent, wasn't it? I mean, it's like, you know, inflation busting pay rises, they were called at the time, were given out, which led to everybody wanting one. And it's just physically impossible to give everybody in the country an inflation matching pay rise. I mean, the problem with this story is that these are the key workers we're talking about. They are the people responsible for keeping our lights running, for collecting our rubbish. And many of them are incredibly poorly paid. And these are the key workers that kept the country going during the pandemic. And we all stood, not just the NHS, we all stood there and clapped for them, etc., etc. And now they quite rightly want a decent pay rise, and we're saying there's no money available. I mean, if you couldn't see this coming round the corner when we were locking things down and stopping people working during the pandemic, then you were pretty stupid. I mean, but as you say, you can't give everybody that pay rise. It's impossible.
And earlier this morning on your programme, there was this, you know, £10 worth of groceries for a penny.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, or was it a pound? Sorry, it was a pound. A penny. You know, and this is happening all the time. I mean, you know, it's appalling to think that we have to have food banks in order to feed people. Thank God we do. But, you know, it is a terrible situation. And I mean, you know, I'm sure all of us on this panel today, if we had the wherewithal, we would give everybody whatever they wanted. But it's impossible to do that.
Can't do it.
Without exacerbating the problem further. Shall we look at the Times, Dawn? And it's galling what's happened over the weekend.
This is absolutely terrifying. This is I mean, it's in all the papers and on some of the most of the front pages actually at some point. This is a motorist who firebombed a migrant processing centre in Dover yesterday before supposedly killing himself at a nearby petrol station. We don't know, the attacker hasn't been named yet, but evidently drove down there. It's the main processing centre down in Dover, and threw a petrol bomb at the centre where new migrants had just arrived. I believe there were 1,000 migrants arrived on Saturday alone. And then drove to the nearest petrol. I mean, this happened in the middle of the day, 11 o'clock in the morning. And this person is supposed to have driven over 100 miles, which makes you think maybe from the London area, to get to the centre just to do this. We don't know the reasons yet at all. But obviously it's an incredibly divisive area at the moment, with the whole Suella Braverman and the whole processing centre down at Marston Airport in saying, you know, the legal row going on over that now. It's illegal, you can't do it, the government will be sued, more money, etc., etc. Nobody seems to know what the answer is to this problem.
No.
But people are quite clearly getting incredibly angry.
But this is the problem, Biggins, isn't it? I mean, obviously what this man has done is a terrible thing, right? But it shows that unless action is taken, this anger that Dawn talks about, and anger from some people and just frustration from others, is going to grow.
It is, and, you know, people want to make a point of saying something and doing something about it, which you understand. I mean, it is terrifying, though, that this, you know, someone's lost their life, he's lost his... I mean, it's just not on, but you understand why they do it. I mean, you know, people mucking up the system on roads, you know, the group...
Extinction Rebellion.
Exactly, you know, I mean, we sympathise with them, but what they're doing is wrong because it's affecting other people. I mean, you know, ambulances aren't allowed to get through then. You know, doctors, you know, it is a real... You understand their enthusiasm for doing something like that, but it's wrong way of doing it.
But you know what? It links to the story we were just talking about with people not being able to afford heating or eating. And, you know, the taxpayers are reading this thinking it's costing between 6.8 and 7 million a day to house migrants in hotels. And they will have warmth, they will have food. And there are taxpayers who are, as we've just discussed, struggling to pay their bills, worried about turning their heating on, thinking, well, why are they being put up in hotels? I can't afford to heat my own home.
No.
I think part of the problem that the Home Secretary's faced is that outcry over the hotels meant they say, OK, no more hotels, we'll put them in these centres instead, but they are clearly inhumane where they are.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you know, no one thinks this system is perfect, but what we need is someone to come up with an answer, and fairly soon, because, you know, tensions are running very high at the moment.
Yeah, and you can't let more things like this happen.
No, of course not. It's appalling what's happened. I mean, you know, thankfully, no one at this centre, you know, was hurt or injured, but I mean, it's just...
Well, there by the grace of God, I think.
Well, quite, Stephen.
Let's cheer ourselves up, Biggins, should we? With a NHS winter crisis.
Absolutely. Well, I went the other day to my doctor and I had one arm was COVID and the other arm was flu. And I had no reaction, thank goodness. And I think people should be doing this. You should go and have both injections. I mean, you know, the national health is under great strain, as we know, but there are fantastic things, especially if you're of a certain age, that you can get. I mean, you know, you should have all these things because it is going to help the NHS in the end.
Well, I always think it's a responsibility so that you are taking potential strain off the system.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's there and it's free and, you know, people can use it. And it's in the end, it is helping so many other people. That is what is so good about it. And, you don't... the people who say, oh, you know, I don't want to get ill by having them, it depends on the person.
Yeah.
You know, you can't say,
You might get a bit of a sniffle. It's not going to do you much.
No.
Is it? Well, the flu jab at least.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you just feel better for knowing you've had that and you're going to perhaps protect yourself in this winter of discontent which is going to come.
Yeah.
Soon.
The headline is that the NHS is facing its worst winter on record. This is another one of those stories. Every year we're going to have the same headline, aren't we?
We have had the same headline. I've been working on newspapers for over 35 years now, Rosie. Obviously, I was a child when I started. And every year I feel like we have been writing stories about the NHS with the word crisis inserted after it. And I remember going back over the years, pictures of people lying on stretchers in hospital, waiting lists, ambulance times, etc., etc., etc. So we do appear to do this story every year. Obviously, when you add in the COVID and the lockdown situation and the huge backlog we have now for all NHS services, it's the perfect storm. So, I mean, it probably is a crisis as opposed to the crisis we've had in the past.
Yeah. Let's have a look at the FT, and this is, if you're watching in Northern Ireland, you'll understand this better than any of us because it gets so complicated, doesn't it? So the power sharing executive, the Northern Ireland Assembly, hasn't been meeting for a while. This time it's down to the DUP. So now an election has been called, which is probably going to take place in December, which is cost £6 million. And when that happens, nothing actually is likely to change. It's not going to change anything. So Micheál Martin, the Taoiseach, has said the power-sharing model is not fit for purpose. And he may have a point.
Well, he may have a point, but what is the alternative? This is what we keep coming back to with so many of the stories we discuss on a daily basis now in the papers. You know, the power-sharing agreement was the landmark peace deal that 1998, wasn't it? And it basically compulsory coalitions so that one side could not govern without the other.
Yes.
And it seems to have jogged along sort of OK, never perfect, but it has meant that it has been more peaceful in Northern Ireland.
But it's also easier to grind things because it's that strange situation where the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister actually have the same amount of power.
Yes.
So if one side pulls out, it all stops.
It all stops, and this is the situation. And I'm sure that, you know, the good people of Northern Ireland now, the last thing, like, they're facing the same financial situation we all are, or worse in many cases. And they are thinking now the last thing we need is for politics, again, to be put on hold. No decisions are made. No help is coming with inflation, with fuel bills, with the cost of living, etc., etc., while we have yet another election. It's like the NHS in crisis. What the actual answers are not that easy. I mean, the power sharing is not a perfect solution, but no one seems to have one that actually is.
Any ideas on it, Christopher?
I wish I did, because I'd make a fortune.
You would, wouldn't you?
And I'd help them enormously because they need the help. But I mean, it's a situation which can't be solved.
No.
Sadly.
No, I just don't know what anyone's going to do with that. I really don't. Dawn Biggins, for now, thank you very much indeed. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Right now it's at 6:47. Let's bring you up to date with the other stories making headlines today. And more than 100 charities are urging the Home Secretary to create safer routes for refugees coming to the UK and to tackle the backlog in asylum claims. Almost 1,000 migrants arrived in the UK after crossing the Channel on Saturday. Early this month, Suella Braverman said those who make the journey across the Channel will face a ban from claiming asylum.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has beaten Jair Bolsonaro in the Brazilian presidential election. Lula narrowly defeated his opponent with just under 51% of the vote against just over 49% for Bolsonaro, who has yet to concede defeat.
Several children among those who were killed after a suspension bridge collapsed in India. Hundreds of people are thought to have fallen into the river, with government officials saying at least 81 people have been killed. The 230-metre bridge had only reopened to the public last week after it was closed for 6 months for renovations.
The demand for new homes for first-time buyers has dropped by a third since the former Chancellor's mini-budget. That's according to the property company Zoopla. Mortgage rates soared to highs of 6% after that budget, with many lenders pulling products from the market.
British universities are facing a multi-million-pound legal action from students who are demanding a refund.
Well, in case you can't remember, the pandemic meant that many universities closed their facilities and classes were just moved online. So, you've got to say, a real reduced service to students. But most of those students, of course, as is the way, still had to pay the full tuition fees.
Well, let's find out a little bit more. Joining us now in the studio is the former Central St Martin's student, Tia O'Donnell, and also solicitor for the student group Claim, Ryan Dunleavy. Good morning to both of you. Tia, let's start with you if we can. So just talk us through, you finally get this place that you'd wanted to do, I think, since you were about 12, and then what was your university experience like?
Well, it was a fraction of what I imagined it to be, quite frank. And, you know, since that has been one of my dreams to attend Central St Martin's, it is one of the most renowned art universities in the world with the most fantastic amenities. And for my experience to just turn into a bedroom, you know, producer was quite heartbreaking and depressing.
I mean, it's interesting because, I mean, for some students, it will have worked better than others, depending on what their subject was, and perhaps a more academic subject
Absolutely.
would have worked slightly better than this. But when it comes to art and painting and ceramics and all that sort of thing, I mean, you can't physically get on with it, can you?
It's a very practical, hands-on degree, and I was specifically studying sculpture. And, you know, how am I going to be able to do that without all of the ceramic workshops and the metal workshops? I don't have access to that from my bedroom.
You made a very visual protest at your graduation. For anyone who isn't familiar with your story, just tell us what happened.
For my graduation, I decided to wear a banner that said, I want a refund. And I think I spoke up for a lot of students who feel like they weren't heard.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a statement. I just wonder, what was the reaction from the staff on stage at the time?
I think they slowly realised what was happening and sort of stopped applauding. But everyone else, you know, the students and people in the audience, they were really clapping and taking photos and overwhelmed.
It's interesting, Ryan, as is always the case, when you speak to one side, it sounds like an open and shut case, doesn't it? But however, what are the universities saying? Because there's a reason why they're not sort of just going along with this, isn't there, and offering substantial refunds. They must say, well, look, we did the best we could under hard circumstances.
They are saying that, but at the same time, they increased their profits by, I think it was over £1 billion for the 18 universities we're looking at between 2018 and now. So we're also looking at strikes, not just, and how that led to cancelled tuition, not just the lockdowns. And we're not saying they could have done anything differently, but it's a bit like if you buy a ticket to go and see The Lion King and you get sent the DVD instead, you'd expect to be paid back the difference in value between the DVD and actually going to see it. And we're not saying that, you know, they could have put the Lion King show on. What we're saying is that they overcharged.
Yeah.
And some universities increased their tuition income by 48% for King's College, 41% for UCL, which is our lead play.
Was that increase just because they didn't have the same expenditure in terms of the buildings they were using? And
they increased their student numbers. So if you think about it, well, we don't know fully, but they did increase their student numbers across the board pretty much. So if you're not constrained by the size of a lecture theatre, you can take on more students and give them a lesser service, charge them the same. And the students are consumers, so they deserve to have a refund like anybody else. We're not saying that they need a full refund, but they need to get back the difference between the value of the course and what they paid for.
The knock-on impact of those increased numbers has actually caused problems in some cities now with just literally not having enough student accommodation to look after all of them who have gone back in person. It's not just art schools that you're looking to pursue this action for, it's other degrees. How do you sort of quantify the impact on each student if, obviously, if you had a very practical course, you've been really hindered. If you were doing a more academic one, maybe the refund isn't so great?
We're going to have to work all this out. So we have formulae that we're using to calculate damages. So this is all to be negotiated or to be dealt with by the court. So you're absolutely right. Not every single course is going to be identical, but people have to have, this is a group action. There are 3 to 4 million students who are affected here. So there can't be 3 to 4 million individual claims. I mean, it would be ridiculous and it would snarl up the whole court system. So we have a group structure that we can use to do this, and this has all got to be fleshed out later. But we've done this because of a groundswell of students coming to us. It's not the other way around. So we've had 20,000 students coming to us saying it's just been an appalling service. We've been overcharged. Employers don't value our degrees as much as other people's from the non-COVID period. And we feel that we deserve some recompense. We need the difference in value between effectively what was an online course and an in-person course, which is what we paid for. So we set up a student group claim.
And where has this left you, Tia, in terms of you now as a qualified ceramicist specialist or sculpture specialist, as your degree says you are? What are you really?
Well, that's a very good question because I don't really have a solid answer for that because, my degree has left me feeling like I don't have a degree that's worth the value that I paid for it. And that has led me to, lose a lot of confidence in my craft and my career. But, I won't give up and I will keep going. But I'm just, super thankful that the student group claim are giving us some recognition and some voice because we've been silenced. And it feels that, no one really wants to listen to the students, even though that they are the reason why these establishments are still profiting and still in business.
I was wondering, Ryan, in all of this, I mean, just very briefly, because we're out of time, really.
Sure.
You've got 18 institutions listed. What if someone's watching and there aren't one of these? Can they still contact you?
If they go to our website at studentgroupclaim.co.uk, there's more than 100 universities on there. So we're beginning cases effectively against 18. We have our first hearing against UCL on the 2nd of February. But anyone from any university can come to us. So there's an other section as well as 100.
Right.
So, yes, like I said, it's 3 to 4 million individuals who are affected. We're estimating the compensation will be about £5,000 each for a UK student, but some international students were paying 40 grand for their course rather than the 9,250 capped fee. So they will be able to claim more.
Yeah, OK. Ryan, Tia, really good to see you both. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere. We're going to have more in the next hour on that attack on the migrant centre in Dover after the break.
Well, the UK is shaping up like this today. Dry for many with sunny spells across the country, but sadly wet and windy in the west. Here are the details.
Well, starting off in the southwest, it's going to be calm around lunchtime with bursts of sunshine. Later, some rain is going to arrive and carry on late into the evening.
Well, in the southeast, it's going to be drier with some fine clouds setting in the afternoon. We also expect warmer temperatures again, at least for this time of year.
Now, in Wales, there's potentially going to be the odd shower here and there, but it should be mostly fine and dry. That warm spell will last throughout the morning and into the afternoon.
Moving on to the Midlands for you, plenty of fine weather actually, 1 or 2 sunny breaks as well. Again, unseasonably warm, though temperatures not quite as high as we saw over the weekend.
It's a similar picture for the northeast of England, with sunny spells for much of the day. It's going to get a little bit blustery at times, but thankfully will still be warm for those out and about.
Now, heavy rain will have pushed in across western parts of Scotland by mid-morning. It's going to be drier further east, albeit with some showers, before the persistent rain arrives a little bit later on.
Now, meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, expect a wet and windy day. The rain's going to be heavy at times, leading to the risk of localised flooding, as well as some difficult driving conditions.
So, for most, the rain will push eastwards across the UK, further showery rain feeding in from the south. And that's how your weather's looking today.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
On radio,
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel, Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Every Saturday at 2 o'clock, join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain. I'm not afraid to give you a platform and say it how it is.
Come on, make the case.
Something like this is very, very important to people.
And we're always up for a laugh on this show.
God, honestly, you'd think there were no problems in the world.
Real Britain, every Saturday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
The Immigration Minister calls the situation in Kent intolerable after a firebomb attack on a migrant processing centre in Dover.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock. It's Monday, the 31st of October. Happy Halloween and welcome to Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Rosie.
Well, here's what's leading the news this morning. The Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, visited Dover last night following a firebomb attack on a Border Force migrant centre. Kent police have confirmed that 2 people were injured in the attack.
The government is under pressure to open an investigation into allegations that Liz Truss's phone was hacked when she was Foreign Secretary. Private messages, including about the war in Ukraine, reportedly fell into foreign hands.
And from Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles to Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, are we living in the age of the toy boy? We'll meet the dating blogger who says women shouldn't be judged on having relationships with younger men.
Don't know what to say about that one. I'm lost for words. Any cougars out there? You want to get in touch? gbnews@gbnews.uk. Anything you want to talk about, we want to hear from.
What's going to end up in the inbox now, Steve? Well, let's go to our top story of the day. And Kent police are continuing their investigation into the attack on a Home Office migrant centre this morning. Petrol bombs were thrown at the facility before the suspect behind the attack was then found dead nearby with a further device in their vehicle.
Now, suspected migrants that were being held at the Home Office site have now been moved to Manston Migrant Processing Centre, which was at the very centre of Mark White's exclusive report on Saturday, talking about how bad the conditions there were.
Yeah, we'll be speaking to Mark a little bit later on in the programme. But the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, visited the Manston site yesterday, calling the current situation intolerable.
Well, let's talk to the Deputy Political Editor of HuffPost UK, Sophia Slate. Morning to you. And whichever angle you look at this at, the attack at Dover or the move to Manston, it just highlights how this system is... I mean, it's not only not working, it's quite literally falling apart at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. There's this real general sense at the moment that our asylum system is on the brink of collapse. I think this weekend we saw 1,000 migrants in one day land in boats on our shores. The queues, I mean, this awful attack as well. There's a real sense that we're kind of at fever pitch, I suppose, here. And I think it's this event, particularly the awful petrol bombing. I mean, thank goodness no one was hurt. But it kind of highlights the kind of fever of the moment. And this is a huge test for our new Home Secretary, Suella Braverman.
Has she got, really, right now, with all the other stories flying around about her, the credibility to actually impact this situation?
I think that's a really good question. I think if you look at how everything plays out over the weekend, you know, very serious events, very serious criticisms, who was on the front foot of reacting to all of this? It wasn't the Home Secretary. You know, she wasn't on our TV screens. She wasn't the one responding to it. The person that put out a statement from the government, first of all, was Robert Jenrick, the Immigration Minister. It wasn't our Home Secretary. She put one out a few hours later after the awful petrol bombing. So I think you know, my question sort of going into this week is, you know, is Suella Braverman being sidelined a little bit here? Is she on the front foot of this crisis, or, you know, is Rishi Sunak pushing out other ministers to the front on this?
I mean, in a sense, would that be a sensible move in that there are issues around Suella Braverman which cause problems for Rishi Sunak, but getting rid of her would cause even more problems. I mean, not just within his own party, but actually with the markets and this sort of idea of instability.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. I think she kind of she served a purpose. I sort of saw her, you know, whether or not they may or may not have done a deal, Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman, but she was kind of you know, her support for Rishi was a kind of block Boris, bring the right with you. So she was kind of it was sort of a marriage of convenience, I think, between those two. And I think you're right. If he did sack her right now, I mean, it's the last thing he'd probably want to do. I think he'll try and keep her for a while. Whether or not she's the Home Secretary this time next year, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
In the meantime, look, this situation, the government ministers often have much more longer-term plans. Oh, we'll talk to France, we'll try to negotiate with them. The Rwanda plan, it needs short-term, immediate intervention because this pressure situation that we're in, with every day, we know, comes more people. And that situation is, as you said, really on the edge of breaking point.
Yeah, I think there's short-term measures that they really need to take, sort of expanding those centres already, because the reports of overcrowding are hideous. You know, I'm sure you would have seen the reports over the weekend. Diphtheria, scabies, MRSA, I think there was a report this morning. You know, we're better than that. You know, it's a crisis, but I think we need to be better than that.
And we do need to look at the frustration this causes. A lot of people are very sympathetic, but that doesn't mean you can't be frustrated as well. Gail's been in touch. Morning, Gail. She says, I have great sympathy for genuine asylum seekers, but we can't even house British people properly. No, it's a fair point. I mean, that's not a racist point, is it? That's just a fair point. Tensions
are running really, really high. There was some quite interesting sort of human interest case studies of people that lived in Dover and reporting how they'd sort of seen a migrant climbing over their fence and things like that, or, you know, even in their bedroom. And, you know, they were sort of saying, we actually feel sorry for the migrants as well, but we're also terrified when, you know, someone's in our garden or whatever. So I think, you know, immediately a lot needs to be done to sort of reassure those communities in Kent as well.
Yeah, which is a fair point. John, morning, John, says the government needs to get to grips with the amount of people coming here every day, as it's having mental health effects on people who live here, especially in Kent. I mean, that is, you know, I've got to be careful with the language, but you don't want to turn Dover and that part of Kent into an area where people just do not want to be.
Exactly. I think you know, I don't sort of blame politicians for that awful attack at the weekend and things like that, but I think maybe they have a role to play in sort of dialing down language a little bit. I think they need to reassure the Kent community that they're taking action, for one thing, but I also think they could do a little bit in sort of dialing rhetoric down and trying to calm the situation down and reassure people that they are acting on it.
Sandra's made an interesting point, and it came up earlier, actually. She says the government has got wiggle room on immigration because it's the economy that's keeping people up at night. Do you agree with Sandra's analysis?
You know, I think the next election, right now, standing right here, the next election is going to be fought on the economy, not the migrant crisis. Because the migrant crisis, yes, it affects a lot of communities around the UK, particularly, you know, on the south coast. But I think everyone in our country right now is, you know, we're worried about our own purses, our own wallets, and the economic situation. And that's been kind of dominating the headlines for the last few months as well.
Well, and on that, seeing as we've got you here, Sophia, there's all this. There's one of the pieces in the papers today saying, I don't know, what was it? 1.8 million public sector workers are thinking of quitting their jobs and what have you. I mean, Jill in Stroud says, I'm a teaching assistant. I get paid less an hour than working at Tesco's. We've got 6 vacancies, as qualified people have left, and we can't fill the posts. I mean, it's a perfect storm. I wish I had an answer for Jill as to what the government is doing or will do or can do or could do or what the Labour Party could do. But actually, whoever's in charge, there's no easy answer to this, is there?
There's really not, and that's sort of the thing that I see Rishi Sunak's role at the moment. I think he's a firefighter. You know, I think he's just trying to put out blazes everywhere, and I think, you know, that is certainly one of them as well.
Another blaze to come, potentially today, is this report from the Speaker after those claims of harassment and bullying over the fracking vote that we had just before, and we know we talk about a week's a long time in politics, before Liz Truss resigned. That could be another real headache for Rishi Sunak.
I think it could be embarrassing, particularly if high-profile Tory MPs are implicated in it. But I also, on the flip side, I think sometimes MPs can be a little bit dramatic, and I think maybe there might have been a little bit of Labour sort of hamming things up there. So I think we'll have to wait and see. I mean, if you know, obviously a cabinet minister's implicated or anything like that, then it's a real serious question for Rishi Sunak. But it could just be a storm in a teacup, is what I'm wondering.
It could well be. It could. How dare you suggest politicians can be drama queens in all of this? Sophia, really good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Now, I just want to say, because we were asking you earlier on about, because it's Halloween, of course, happy Halloween, and I'm a bit useless at scary movies, and there's loads of scary movies going up for sale that are apparently still wrapped in plastic, like 15 grand for a VHS of Jaws and things.
A VHS wrapped in plastic as well, so it's really just to put on your shelf
rather than on your shelf.
On your TV.
But Karen, morning Karen, says The Exorcist was the worst film I ever saw. I ended up staying on a put-up bed with my parents.
Oh my God.
I'd be like that. I'm just useless with the scary. It's the tension. I can't deal with the tension.
And John, we were talking earlier as well a little bit about trick or treating. Stephen was saying it's only OK if you do the treating. Well, John was certainly a trickster who says, I'm 50 years old. I'd like to apologise to the people of Putney when me and my friends used to do trick or treat. For trick, we put the milk bottles right in front of the door. So when those poor people came out in the morning, they'd accidentally kick their milk bottles over.
You wicked boy. You
would be really
wicked boy, John.
wouldn't it?
He also says, on the other hand, a lot were very generous and they would give you money rather than sweets. Let me know how that won't be happening this year.
I don't think it will.
No, but you're a wicked, wicked man, John.
Right
and
now.
I hope you're feeling very, very sad.
Well, he
about
said
your
I
past
like to
behaviour. I love it.
11 minutes past 7 now. And let's return to politics, because new reports suggest that the former Prime Minister, Liz Truss's phone was hacked while she was the Foreign Secretary.
Now, let's talk to the former head of the British Army General, Lord Richard Dannett. Good morning to you. It's lovely to see you again. What do you make of all of this? I mean, is it a case of, well, it's very hard to stop it, or are our politicians and our security services just not doing enough to tackle what is actually a very real threat?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is a very real threat, and everybody knows it's a very real threat. So therefore, you don't put yourself in the way of being compromised. And frankly, senior politicians, senior leaders, people in any senior walk of life have got access to secure means of communicating. So it's really a question, I'm afraid, it comes down to discipline, self-discipline, to not use your personal email or your personal iPhone for sending messages of a classified nature. I mean, it's fine to use your own iPhone to ring up a friend and say, I'm going to be home late tonight, can you put the cat out? That's fine. But on your personal iPhone or your personal email, you should not be sending classified material. So it is a question of following the rules, being disciplined about it, and protecting our information, because information about what's going on in the war in Ukraine, for example, isn't just the Foreign Secretary's information, it's information that affects us all. So this is not good news, and there's no excuse for it.
Why do you think this sort of complacency has crept in?
Well, I suppose it's possible that over the last 2 or 3 years, we've got used, just as I'm talking to you now, not from a studio, but from my office at home in Norfolk. This is an insecure line, using a Zoom link or using your Studio Solutions link. Yes, we're talking, I think, pretty effectively. but it is an insecure line, insecure means. The Russians, the Chinese, people from Suffolk, for goodness sake, could be listening into me. Anybody who wanted to break into the system. So we've perhaps got a little bit too used to using these convenient means of communicating, as opposed to using proper channels to make sure that the information that you're passing is kept secure and only available to the person you want to send it to. It's not rocket science. It's just a question of following the rules and being disciplined to do so.
I mean, which raises questions about Suella Braverman and the reason why she left the job before she got it back a week later over sending an email. I don't know how classified it was, but some material that she sent indeed to the wrong person that she shouldn't have sent. Again, it is that sense of discipline, of really considering what you do on a mobile device or even on a laptop, I guess.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Of course, people make mistakes, and if you've genuinely made a mistake once and put your hand up, that's possibly excusable. But I mean, I haven't dug into the Suella Braverman case particularly, but it would appear that there are now conflicting stories about the timeline and who she told when, about what and why. And of course, as so often is the case, it's not when you do something wrong, it's actually how you then try to cover it up or try to change the story to your advantage. So it's disappointing that we're having a conversation only a week on from Rishi Sunak becoming Prime Minister, that one of the senior figures in his government, the Home Secretary, is now the subject of a conversation. Now, I have no idea how this is going to end. Personally, I'm looking for stability in our government and not another Home Secretary being appointed. But the basic point is, senior people need to communicate. There are secure ways of doing it. Use proper self-discipline and do it the proper way.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I know so many people use WhatsApp, which, of course, is ultimately owned by Facebook and Meta and all that sort of lot. Though it's meant to be encrypted, secure end-to-end encrypted. But I know a lot of people, and including, I think, in the army now, are switching to other services, which I won't name, which are considered to be more secure. So it's about the rest of us catching up a little bit, isn't it?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, WhatsApp brands itself and sells itself as being secure. Of course, these things are only secure up to a point. Coming back to the main topic of conversation here, what Liz Truss was passing as Foreign Secretary, one assumes that this was information, these are messages of a classified nature, and you don't even use something like WhatsApp for that. You use proper government-provided secure communications. And if you're the Foreign Secretary or the Home Secretary, you've got staff who can assist you. They've got access to the proper secure means of communicating. So the means of communicating securely are there. Again, it comes back to the basic point. Use the system that's provided. Don't compromise yourself and don't compromise public information. That's your information and my information. That's not right.
Lord Dannatt, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. It's interesting, isn't it? I do have an element of sympathy in that we're all just so used to immediately responding to stuff and just, I can't live without my mobile phone. It's got my life is on my mobile phone. And if I suddenly became a politician, how easy would it be to slip back into that mindset? So I've got a degree of sympathy, but Lord Dannatt is right. We're talking about the welfare of the country here.
And surely it depends on the subject matter.
Well, yes and no. In the sense that our guest earlier on was saying, well, actually, it can be, if you're the Foreign Secretary or the Prime Minister or whatever, and there are private messages, intimate messages or anything like that can be then used to influence you, can't it? I mean, that's your typical blackmail material. I'm not saying there's anything like that on any of the phones we're talking about, but, that can be used as blackmail material, pressurising material. So it's not even just the classified stuff that you need to think about if you're in a high-profile position.
It does certainly seem obvious not to use your personal phone to speak about classified information.
But then it's your personal information is a problem as well. Maybe they should have, if they want a personal phone number, have that as a secure line as well. There you go.
Ask us, the security experts, for our ideas.
I listen to a lot of espionage audiobooks, and it's all getting that line secured. They all have to get secure lines, let me tell you. And if you ever dealt with a secure email, if you ever emailed Downing Street, the email address for Downing Street, for example, is very, very strange. It must pass through about 12 different servers before it lands on the desk.
Probably.
It's all checked and double-checked again, but anyway.
Right now, it's 18 minutes past 7. Let's give you a brief overview of what else is happening today. And more than 100 charities are now urging the Home Secretary to create safer routes for refugees coming to the UK, and they say to tackle the backlog in asylum claims. Well, almost 1,000 migrants arrived in the UK after crossing the Channel on Saturday. Earlier this month, Suella Braverman said those who make the journey across the Channel will face a ban from claiming asylum.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has beaten Jair Bolsonaro in the Brazilian presidential election. Very tight, though. Lula getting 50.9% against 49.1% for Bolsonaro, who won't concede defeat.
Staff at the Co-op will be able to take paid time off for fertility treatments. It's a new policy that will provide paid leave for the retailer's employees to attend medical appointments for treatments, including people using a surrogate.
Now, convenience shops across the country have been giving families the chance to buy a basket of groceries worth £10 for just a penny.
The scheme's been run in conjunction with the Snappy Shopper delivery app, and 13,000 bundles have already been sold this month.
Our Yorkshire reporter Anna Riley went to Backley to find out more.
A bag full of food and drink essentials at the price of just a penny. A lifeline for customers of Note's family-run convenience store in Batley. At a time when people across the country are choosing between heating and eating, shopkeepers like Serge are quite literally helping to put food on the table.
The family's had the store for 46 years. I've been actively working in these shops for about 23 years. And since COVID, we've actually seen a lot of people struggling, reaching out to convenience stores, reaching out to local stores more and more, community. And with us being a community store, we've had to step up our game. Recently, due to the cost of living crisis, we've seen a lot of people struggling to pay the food bills. So when we teamed up with Snappy Shopper, we just thought it was a really good thing that, you know, what they're coming out with. Last week we did another penny bundle, which was our biggest ever offer we've done in the store in 47 years. We did about £10 worth of groceries, and we sold it for a penny through our delivery service, and we delivered it to the door. We did over 200 in 3 days, but I do know that Snappy Shopper did well over 10,000 bags up and down the country.
The scheme works through the Snappy Shopper delivery app, and it's helped to keep the business running.
It's helping us grow our sales, which we need to do to help with the rising costs we've incurred with the electricity going up, food prices are going up, gas bills are going up for ourselves, not as an individual. So we have to find more income coming in because we were just we were surviving prior to all the cost of living crisis. But with the cost of living crisis up, we need to do more to stand still. My saying is we're having to run just to stand still.
For Snappy Shopper, community is at the heart of the offer.
We're enabling that retailer via Snappy Shopper to, grow their business through delivery, but equally we want to support that retailer's pillar in the community.
A food delivery service that's delivering for the community in a cost of living crisis. Anna Riley, GB News, Batley.
And if you've used that service, if you've got your shopping for a penny, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.uk. But don't go anywhere. Paul Coyte's got all your sport in a couple of minutes. We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's
news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. 26 minutes past 7. Still to come on Breakfast this morning at 7:45 as Olivia Wilde and Harry Styles' relationship is making headlines constantly. We're going to be talking about the rise of toy boys and why the stigma around women dating younger men persists.
At 8:15, we'll ask the Shadow Minister for Immigration what Labour would do about the crisis in Dover after firebombs were thrown at a processing centre there.
Please do continue to get in touch. gbviews at gbnews.uk, or you can drop us a tweet too at gbnews.
I love the fact, Paul Coyte's here, by the way. I love the fact, Paul, that you talk about women having toy boys.
Yes.
If it's the other way around,
yes,
you're just a dirty old man.
That's right, yeah. What? So really, so I lose everywhere. So my days of a toy boy, I think, could be over. Unless Margaret Rutherford is still alive. I don't know what. There's one for the kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they all get Margaret Rutherford. Best Agatha. Well, actually, she wasn't the best Miss Marple. I thought Joan Hickson was the best one.
Right, OK. Is she still around?
No, she's long dead as well.
What about Agatha Christie? No,
I think she's gone.
There's another one. Well, it's over for me then. That's it. Forget it. Yeah.
What's happening with the sport?
Right, we had a big Premier League weekend. I mean, some real upsets. So Leeds went to Liverpool and won there, which was a real turn-up. So just when you think Liverpool looking better, no, great win for Leeds. And then Brighton, Graham Potter, manager of Chelsea, leaves Brighton to go to Chelsea. goes back to Brighton, brings Chelsea, and Brighton spank them 4-1. So an amazing result there. Yesterday, Manchester United beat West Ham 1-0. Very close game, but Marcus Rashford. So it's almost like the return of Marcus Rashford. Marcus Rashford, of course, we know how brilliant he's been with the charity work, but then his football suffered and he just wasn't playing so well. So then there was a lot of critics around that were saying, look, there's Marcus there, and just saying, look, it's all very good what you're doing, but you need to concentrate on what you're best at, which is playing football. So it seems that he's talking about his headspace now. He's in a better headspace. The World Cup's coming up, so looking very good for Marcus Rashford. So he's playing very well. So scored a good goal against West Ham yesterday. And Arsenal, as much as it pains me, I think we're going to have to say that Arsenal are now contenders for the Premier League. That's actually me putting the mockers on it. So just trying to... But the thing is, they beat Nottingham Forest 5-0. And in all seriousness, Arsenal are looking very, very good. And then I say it's a roller coaster. It's more of a steam train that just keeps rolling on. So they're doing extremely well. Bad result recently. They lost in the week and then drew. But they're back going again. And Nottingham Forest, not so good, who are bottom of the Premier League at the moment. So... two different ends there. So that's where we are with football.
I want Forest to do well, I do.
I know, but it could be running out of time, It's obviously they beat Liverpool, but then go and get very heavily beaten by Arsenal. But we'll see. Still early days, got the World Cup in between, so who knows how things are going to go.
Tell us about Max Verstappen.
Max Verstappen. See, it's a great name to say, Max. I don't know whether people... See, you say it like I would like to go with Verstappen. And use your S for the Verstappen. I mean, Rosie, you worked on the European...
Verstappen.
You'd say Verstappen?
Oh, no.
Are we wrong then to Verstappen it?
I think you should say it how you would say it.
Oh, I think you need to embrace it.
Embrace the Verstappen. So
embrace it.
It's his forte. I mean, however we pronounce his name, he is an amazing driver.
He is.
14th victory of the season, which is a record, which has just been broken, and also Lewis Hamilton's record for the most points in a season. So that's been smashed as well, or smashed, as the case may be. But the thing is, there's an interesting thing that's been going on, and this is where I don't agree with Verstappen, is that he's now refused to speak to Sky. Now, Sky Sports, who do a lot of the coverage for F1. Ted Kravitz is their pit lane reporter. And what he said at the end of last season was that he thought that Lewis Hamilton was robbed, which was a pretty controversial win at the end of last season. I could go into the whole thing about the Grand Prix, but we know it was a very tricky situation. So now Verstappen has refused to be interviewed by anybody to do with Sky because he didn't like what they said about him. So we then start getting into a situation where sports stars can go, well, I didn't like what you said, I will never speak to you again. It's just nonsense, don't you think? If someone criticises or they have their own view about something, and now Red Bull have also followed suit because they know that Verstappen's the cash cow and they don't want to upset him, and Christian Horner won't speak to them either, all because Max has said, I didn't like what he said about that, so therefore I'm going to refuse to speak to them.
It ultimately all boils down to relationships, doesn't it?
It's so petty, though, Rosie. Don't you think it's so petty?
It can be solved.
How?
Money.
It's always the way, isn't it? It's always going to be the way. But it was a similar thing that happened with Manchester United and Sir Alex Ferguson, years ago, whereas he refused to speak to the BBC for 7 years. And he would, it all went back to a documentary that was made about him and his son, who was an agent, and he was very unhappy with it. So said, and this was a different part of the BBC. So he said, well, that's it. I'm never going to speak to you. If you want to interview me, I'll refuse. And he had to pay a fine every single game because he refused to do any interviews. So I don't know whether Verstappen's... See, I Verstappen that time. He's going to refuse, but I just think it's so petty. I think everybody should be able to criticise whoever they want, especially in sport, and therefore the sports stars should answer questions.
And maybe your ego should be strong enough to be able to withstand someone saying...
That's exactly the situation.
Paul, that's it. Thank you very much indeed. You were smashing.
Well, thank you very much. There was more Sean Connery than Verstappen, but it's very, very good. Thank you very much.
I fear there may be more of this throughout the programme this morning. It's gone 7:30. Don't go anywhere after the break. We're going to be rejoined again by Dawn Neeson and Christopher Biggins to go through the papers.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back to Breakfast. Time now to go through the papers with the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and the actor Christopher Biggins. A very good morning to both of you. Biggins, you were telling me rather expensive tickets to see a pop star, if I fancy.
Absolutely. Well, Adele is going back. Of course, poor Adele had a bit of a trouble earlier.
Was it about a year ago?
Was it a year ago? Yes. Yeah. She was going to open in Las Vegas. And you've not been to Las Vegas?
No, I've never been. Oh, I might go for Adele, but not for 40,000.
No, she's charging this time. She's going back to Las Vegas, and there was real problems before with the set, and she wasn't happy. And she's going back, and now tickets are selling in Las Vegas for £40,000. I mean, it's ludicrous, isn't it?
I would pay that not to see it.
Yeah, I would. I would.
Really? Sorry, but controversial.
Well, I think the bigger problem is that if you pay for a ticket, last time lots of people have done that, their accommodation, their flights, to then get a teary video posted on social media to say, sorry, guys, it's cancelled.
I know.
So can you trust her that it's going to go on?
No, I don't think you can. Listen, if people want to spend that ridiculous amount of money, then good luck to them. But, not for me, I'm afraid.
Well, you've got to be mega rich to do that.
Yeah, you do. But I have to say, as we were talking earlier before this, in the break, go to Las Vegas and go for 3 days. It is phenomenal. But any longer, and forget it. It's a 3-day wonder.
Yeah, I
But
couldn't believe
it's
it.
fantastic place. I mean, you know, never goes to bed. You just go from one theatre to another theatre, to a restaurant, to a, you know, and the gambling is fun.
Oh.
I love sitting in those machines and just pulling. Oh,
Do you ever win?
yes. No, but it's good fun though.
Provided you keep a handle on
Yes.
it. The machines are good fun, it has to be said.
I'd go and see it. I think Adele's incredible.
I love Adele.
Do you?
Yes.
Really?
I just feel like I've heard one song and I've heard everything she does. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Voice, though.
And I just think she was a bit mean to fans, as you say, that teary video when people were literally getting off the planes to go and see her that time. All that money wasted.
I just, there's not many artists at the top of the charts now who could just command an audience with just a piano and her voice, and she can do that in such a sublime way.
Well, that was the problem, wasn't it? Wasn't there a water feature on stage as
It was like
well?
a
She was
swimming pool
having
or something.
issues with.
Well,
so...
don't we all? Don't we all?
Well, you are terrible with the water
Terrible
feature.
with the water feature. It's a nightmare.
No, Stephen, that's enough of your bladder. What should we talk about next?
Good, let's talk about the Times. What's the armed forces are telling women to stop sleeping about?
Well, this is the actual headline. Don't sleep around. Service women are told. Sorry, it takes two. What about the men involved in this? This is on the back of this horrific story about a submarine rape claim where the woman was treated like she was the guilty party. And, you know, the Royal Navy's been forced to investigate a scandal over the treatment of women serving on British nuclear submarines. Sophie Brooke is the story in the Mail about this as well. And she's revealed a culture of misogyny where she described women were ranked on a rape list during her time while she was serving on the submarines. And it was just like they were treated as second-class citizens. And in the 12 months to March of this year, 68.3% of rape cases heard in civilian courts secured a conviction, where only 12% in the court-martial had. So basically, the armed forces...
But that doesn't mean that... I always have an issue when we talk about conviction rates, whatever the crime is, because it's like, well, only half of them have been convicted. Therefore, half of them have got away with it. Well, not if they weren't guilty.
No, well, obviously there is that, but they're not actually getting to court, Stephen, as well, is the other issue here. I mean, they're not even getting there. But, I mean, it's just the advice is like, you know, it's like, you know, there is a hell of a lot of misogyny still existing. We know, we've discussed it at length on this show in our Metropolitan Police Force for a certain. But the armed forces still seem to have this culture where women, even though you can be on the front line now, we had that marvellous story the other day about the young lady who passed her para
Private
test.
Carter.
Yeah, and it's like, but there is still this misogyny, and just the advice that women are being given now not to sleep around. I mean, you know, to prevent sex attacks. It's like, it's not the women doing the sex attacks, by the way. It's the men doing it. What advice are you giving to men?
I suppose the difference is the women are very much in the minority.
Yes.
And so it's easier to, if you want to control, it's going to be easier to try to control the smaller group than the larger group. But I guess...
But it's not the smaller group that need controlling.
Well, no, you're right. But I don't know. I mean, it does smack a bit odd, but telling the army boys to behave themselves in that way, if they're, you know, 19 and young, free and single, it seems, I mean, it's a hide into nothing, isn't it?
Well, you're telling young women.
Well, you're telling, yeah, I know.
Rape victims are the victims. The clue's in the word victim.
Yeah.
They're not the perpetrators. Just saying. Okay, so back to your bladder.
Yeah. No, I just think it's a really difficult one.
It is difficult. It's a horrific story, but it's just that headline that caught my eyes. Don't sleep around women.
Let's move to the Daily Mail, if we can, begins. And Harry's book. We've
Yes.
already heard a little bit about it on the programme this morning, but the Daily Mail's take is that did he have to sex up the book for the publishers?
Well, I probably originally he did. My interest in the book is I can't wait to read it. I mean, I've got
Really?
I'm longing to read it.
Biggins.
No, I'm
Why?
sorry.
Why?
Because I want to see what he's written. I want to see how he's affected the royal family. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. And I've ordered mine already from Amazon. So what's your problem, Dawn?
Even the fact that the title is called, it's clever. It's spare. It's like just screams of victimhood, doesn't it? In that one word, he's managing to have a go, but his father and his brother just by, I'm spare. And it's just, you know, people are really suffering out there. And he's in an incredibly privileged position, as is his wife. And yet they are permanently portraying themselves as victims.
What do you make of this from Debbie Biggins, who says, every story has two sides, but we will only ever get to hear Harry's version. King Charles will never be able to respond or counter any allegation.
Well, at the moment, but they made, King Charles may do a book later on, which he might say things in it. I mean, I think, you know, you have to give everybody a chance. I mean, there are so many biographies, so much we know about people. I'm fascinated by the fact, I think that this was going to come out at Thanksgiving in America, and they've now made it come out in January. And I think the problem is that he's probably gone back after his grandmother's funeral and said, can we cut this? Can we get rid of this? And they, you know, they paid him, what's 34 million? Yeah. I mean, a lot of money for this book. Yeah. And he's probably worried a little bit, because he did absolutely adore his grandmother, and I think she probably had a few words to say on the subject. I mean, I'm only interested because I just think it's going to be fascinating to see what he has to say.
And I think the reality is, if we don't read it, we'll certainly get the best lines from the book anyway, because it will be littered throughout the papers.
Yes, in the Daily Mail, for sure.
What's going on with eco-warriors in the Sun, Dawn?
Oh, they're still gluing themselves to things, evidently.
Oh, are they lovely?
Yes.
Well, they promised they would for all of October.
Yeah, they did. And it's Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody, by the way. And they are still doing it. They started on the 1st of October. But the thing is now, furious drivers have actually started to drag them away. And the police are telling the public not to intervene. Now, it's the police's job. Surely it's a criminal offence to do what they're doing on the roads, to block the roads. Surely it's the police's job to remove them, and yet the police don't seem to actually be doing that. So you can't blame. So the very dramatic picture of a lady who was trying to get her sick child, I believe, to hospital, literally dragging one of them away, and you cannot blame people for doing this.
But she could, therefore, you're more likely to see her prosecuted for actual bodily harm. Or
Meanwhile, the police don't seem to be doing anything. In fact, you know, the bit of footage I saw online over the weekend, they were just sitting, crouching down, almost offering them a cup of tea still.
Well, the police have, in some cases, been trying to remove them and take their hands away and clear the roads. What's the alternative? What should the police be doing when they're all sat there glued to the pavement?
Removing them straight away. Don't sit there, don't offer them a cup of tea, don't give them blankets. Just remove them straight away, Rosie. Why do we let them do that?
And it's
a criminal offence.
And it's interesting, too, what you're saying, because the actual public are doing their bit now. They're removing them. They're pulling them off.
Yeah, but as Stephen just said, they're the ones that are going to get prosecuted.
Yes.
So why do you think there's this reticence from the police to do that?
I have absolutely no idea. You know what, Rosie? Speaking as a football fan, I go to football home and away most weekends, and football fans just walking to the ground are nowhere treated anywhere like this by the police forces. We are treated like criminals purely by walking to a football ground, OK? We're not offered cups of tea or a blanket if we're a bit nippy. We're not even breaking any laws. So why are they treating this lot with kid gloves, whereas ordinary people, certainly football fans will know this, are treated like criminals just for going to an away match?
I don't think the police should move in and unglue them straight away.
Yeah, I do.
No, I don't.
Why?
I don't. No, I'd leave them there. I'd leave them there.
Yeah, but the chaos they're causing.
Well, let's live with that for a week and see what they're like in a week.
Yeah,
I'd do it again.
Stephen, I would completely agree with you, Stephen. I mean, I really would. However, they are blocking major artery, getting to hospital.
I tell you what is a good idea is, why don't we remove them and stick them somewhere else? You know, on some, you know...
Stick them on the next wall.
I know, what, you know, the olden days when they used to put
the stocks.
The stocks and throw things at them. That would be marvellous.
Well, I can see the appeal.
Yeah, or a prison cell, possibly. That would be quite a good one. Good with them in there.
The police are supposed to have increased powers to be able to handle exactly this scenario, but as you say, Dawn, in many of those situations, it does appear as though they're not doing exactly what maybe they should.
Rosie, I don't even drive a car, by the way. I'm quite green. I actually cycle everywhere. My favourite one was I was actually coming down a cycle lane, and there was one of them glued to the cycle lane. It's like, it's a cycle lane. You want people to cycle.
Yeah.
Well, they want you to talk about it, which is exactly what we've done.
Doing. Yes, indeed it is. Thank you both. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Thanking you. It is 7:47. Let's bring you up to date with some of the headlines.
More than 100 charities are urging the Home Secretary to create safer routes for refugees coming to the UK and to tackle the backlog in asylum claims. It says almost 1,000 migrants arrived in the UK after crossing the Channel on Saturday. Early this month, Suella Braverman said those who make the journey across the channel will face a ban from claiming asylum.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has beaten Jair Bolsonaro in the Brazilian presidential election, very narrowly though, with 50.9% against 49.1%. Bolsonaro has, unsurprisingly, not yet conceded his defeat.
Several children are among those who've been killed after a suspension bridge collapsed in India. Hundreds of people are thought to have fallen into the river, with government officials saying at least 81 people have been killed. The 230-metre bridge had only just reopened to the public last week, having been closed for 6 months for renovations.
The demand for new homes from first-time buyers has dropped by a third since the mini-budget, according to property company Zoopla. Mortgage rates had soared to highs of 6% after that budget, many lenders pulling products from the market, although the latest signs, the reporting over the weekend, is that those rates are starting to come down.
Now, according to the dating app Tinder, there's been a rise in searches for age gap relationships this year, with half of its users matching with a younger person in May alone. Well, similarly, on TikTok, the hashtag dating younger men has had 560 million views.
Oh, wow. The actress Olivia Wilde is, shock, horror, 10 years older than Harry Styles, and their age gap relationship is said to have inspired Anne Hathaway's new movie, The Idea of You.
So is there a stigma attached to so-called cougars, or is that in decline? We're now joined by the dating blogger Gaynor Evans, who's been married to a younger man. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Good morning.
Have you experienced any sort of stigma for the age of your other half?
Yes, I mean, I did at the time, because when I actually got married, which was quite a while ago, it was a really new thing, and he was 10 years my junior, and everyone said, oh, you've got a toy boy, and it was real... But, you know, it won't last. But 20 years it lasted. So, and when we broke up, it had absolutely nothing to do with the age gap. So I can, you know, say that it doesn't necessarily have to be a fleeting relationship.
But isn't it the idea... I mean, I know some people sort of frown on it, but the idea of having a toy boy, that's quite empowering, isn't it?
It's very empowering. And I think since my divorce, I've dated men with a much bigger age gap than the 10 years. Oh, yes, absolutely. And that was because the pool of people available to me was really mainly in the younger age group. The older man, or the man in my own age group, who, if the sort I would like, perhaps, that was desirable fit, you know, sort of George Clooney, that type of thing, they wouldn't be looking at me.
Right.
They'd be looking at someone 30 years their junior, 25 years their junior.
And that's not frowned on in the same way?
No, of course not. So where do older women like me go for then? We're sort of left with what there is left available, which just seem to be younger men. So I thought, well, I'm not looking for a serious relationship. I'll just enjoy it. And it was very empowering. You're quite right.
How much in that time frame then, 20 years in a relationship, then you've come out and you're dating again?
Yes.
How much have attitudes changed in that time?
Not enough, in my opinion, but it has... It's getting more acceptable, but the fact that I'm still here talking about it means we're not yet in the normal range of it. It's not saying, well, you know, I prefer, like, older men. Still seems to be OK.
But what's the motivation, though? Because, I mean, this could be totally wrong, but a lot of... When you have a younger woman with an older man, sometimes you say, well, it's sugar daddy.
Yes.
Now, that may or may not be the case. Is there a motivation, a similar sort of stereotype, if you like, for the younger man and the older woman?
I think there probably is, and it's certainly not that in my case. I'm certainly no one's sugar mummy. I hate that term, actually. Being a mother, it's just, you know, I find it quite offensive, personally. It's probably more that the age gap sets a certain... frisson between the two. And obviously a lot of it is, I'm not going to, you know, lie about it, a lot of it is sexually driven. I think the attraction that we bring is sort of experience, confidence. We're not looking for any boxes to be ticked. We don't need to be going away for long weekends, meeting the parents. We don't need a ring on our finger. We're just enjoying the moment with these younger men. And I think because of that, we are very appealing because we're fun, we're in the moment, we're not looking forward. And obviously a lot of the girls, quite rightly, they want to move forward in the relationships, and the guys find this a little bit intimidating. So we sort of offer a slightly more relaxed sort of feel to things.
But what if you were looking for a much longer, stable commitment?
Well, I wouldn't advise anyone in an older relationship, as an older woman, to look for necessarily that with a very much younger man. You've really got to be lucky to find a very much younger man that would settle. I mean, it depends whether he wants children, that type of thing. Obviously, in my case, 10 years wasn't massive, and we did have a child together, so that was still possible. But I usually say, it doesn't mean you don't get involved, and I have got involved, and they've got involved with me, and it has been difficult. Because if once you get your feelings, it goes over a long period of time. You do get emotionally attached, and then you're left with, now what do you do? So
it's having those things in common, isn't it? Which I guess is why a lot of people are with people of a similar age. Is sort of similar life experiences and things?
No, rather boring, really, similar life experiences. I'd much rather have somebody that's looking forward, that's living now, that's out enjoying themselves, that can talk about life today, you know, is up to date with everything that's going on. And I think we can make lots of... I mean, the conversations I've had, intelligent, world, you know, talking about world politics, whereas the older man...
I might be listening as an older man thinking, I'm intelligent, I can give you a nice dinner and an intelligent chat.
I find they need more looking after and more nurturing than the younger man does. The younger man tends to breeze in and breeze out a bit, which, to be honest, with a busy lifestyle like I've got, you know, with all my other heads that I have to wear, I think it's probably that very fact that, you know, they are like that. An older man would have an expectation, and maybe that's just because I'm not ready to give that expectation, not willing to give up the freedom and the fun that I'm having.
Well, there you go. All power to your elbow. Gaynor Evans, really good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll bring you all the top stories after the weather. Well, the UK is shaping up like this today. Dry for many with sunny spells across the country, but sadly wet and windy in the west. Here are the details.
Well, starting off in the southwest, it's going to be calm around lunchtime with bursts of sunshine. Later, some rain is going to arrive and carry on late into the evening.
Well, in the southeast, it's going to be drier with some fine clouds setting in the afternoon. We also expect warmer temperatures again, at least for this time of year.
Now, in Wales, there's potentially going to be the odd shower here and there, but it should be mostly fine and dry. That warm spell will last throughout the morning and into the afternoon.
Moving on to the Midlands for you, plenty of fine weather actually, 1 or 2 sunny breaks as well. Again, unseasonably warm, though temperatures not quite as high as we saw over the weekend.
It's a similar picture for the northeast of England, with sunny spells for much of the day. It's going to get a little bit blustery at times, but thankfully will still be warm for those out and about.
Now, heavy rain will have pushed in across western parts of Scotland by mid-morning. It's going to be drier further east, albeit with some showers, before the persistent rain arrives a little bit later on.
Now, meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, expect a wet and windy day. The rain's going to be heavy at times, leading to the risk of localised flooding, as well as some difficult driving conditions.
So, for most, the rain will push eastwards across the UK, further showery rain feeding in from the south. And that's how your weather's looking today.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio and online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel. Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank and, of course, fun. Every Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Every Saturday at 2 o'clock, join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain. I'm not afraid to give you a platform and say it how it is.
Come on, make the case. Something like this is very, very important to people.
And we're always up for a laugh on this show.
God, honestly, you'd think there were no problems in the world.
Real Britain, every Saturday on GB News.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
The Immigration Minister calls the situation in Kent intolerable after a firebomb attack on a migrant processing centre in Dover.
Well, a very good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Monday the 31st of October. So happy Halloween, and also welcome to breakfast on GB News this morning with Stephen and Rosie.
Well, here's what's making the headlines for you today. And the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, has been to Dover following that firebomb attack on a Border Force migrant centre. Kent Police confirmed 2 people were injured in the attack.
The government's under pressure to open investigation into allegations that Liz Truss's phone was hacked when she was Foreign Secretary. Private messages, including about the war in Ukraine, reportedly fell into foreign hands.
And he's the former Dragon's Den star turned global entrepreneur. Levi Roots is going to be here in the studio to tell us why, despite their loss last night, he's continuing to support the Jamaican National Rugby League team and wanted them to achieve their dream of making it to the next Rugby World Cup.
Now, please continue to get in touch. You know how to do it. You can tweet us at GB News, or our email is gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Kent Police are continuing their investigation into the attack on a Home Office migrant centre this morning. Petrol bombs were thrown at the facility actually mid-morning yesterday, 11:20, before the suspect behind the attack was found dead nearby with another device in their vehicle.
Well, suspected migrants that were being held at the Home Office site have now been moved to Manston Migrant Processing Centre.
the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, has been to Manston, calling the current situation intolerable.
Well, let's find out more. Joining us for the latest is our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who's in Dover. Mark, just explain to us the implications and the seriousness of what happened over the weekend.
Well, the incident that unfolded here on Sunday morning really just adds to the growing crisis surrounding those who are coming across on small boats, where to accommodate them, and how to deal with what is a problem that the government has been grappling with now for years, and it's a problem that is only growing. As you mentioned, it was 20 past 11 this morning that this Seat white vehicle pulled up at the front of the processing centre here at Dover. There were hundreds of channel migrants in that processing centre at that time, because just the day before, 990 people had crossed the channel, and on Sunday again hundreds more were crossing the channel and arriving at the processing centre. A Reuters photographer saw the man inside that car lobbing out what were incendiary devices, makeshift improvised explosive devices, canisters full of flammable liquid with lit fireworks attached to them. That caused a blaze at the facility itself. A couple of people within the facility were slightly injured. Then after that, we're told, according to this Reuters photographer again, who witnessed the unfolding events and was really quite shaken by it, that man drove to a nearby filling station a few hundred metres from here and then took his own life. The exact circumstances surrounding that are being investigated now by Kent Police. They have not yet described this attack in terms of the motive. They are not treating it, they say, as a terrorist attack. Certainly at this stage, they say they are keeping an open mind.
Mark, Robert Jenrick went to Manston and he tweeted to say, I went to Manston to thank Home Office teams who continue to process migrants securely in challenging conditions. You had your exclusive report on Saturday where you talked to a whistleblower at Manston. I mean, they're not just challenging conditions, are they? I mean, this is really unsustainable.
Yes, because the Manston facility, like the processing centre here at Dover Harbour, was set up really just to do just that, process them for no more than 24 hours, where their fingerprints, other biometric details would be taken. They would then be briefly interviewed and put into interim accommodation. We know, of course, that involves the use of many thousands of hotel rooms in towns and cities right across the country. After the hotel accommodation, they're then put into longer term accommodation, usually council houses or other rented accommodation. Manston, as you say, really quite intolerable situation there. The people that are being housed in Manston sleeping on cardboard on the floors of marquees because there is nowhere else to put them. And to add to that, of course, some 700 people who were at this processing centre in Dover were then sent to Manston because of the events that unfolded here yesterday, just adding to the problem. Now, this processing facility at Manston was only ever supposed to deal with about 1,000, maximum 1,500 at a time, but now we're told that about 4,000 people are there at Manston.
Mark, thank you. Well, let's talk to the political editor of the Daily Express, Sam Lister, who's here in the studio. Morning to you. I mean, and understandably, the Home Secretary is coming under fire for what allegedly was her personal decision to send the people from Dover to Manston, which was already overcrowded.
Yeah, and there's going to be intense pressure on Suella Braverman today. Clearly, that even by the government's admission, by the inspector's admission, this is not a kind of left-wing attack about what's happening at Manston. It's by everybody's admission, this centre is intolerable, it is inhumane. And people have been there for 4 weeks when they should only be there for 24 hours. And obviously, Suella Braverman's got to explain why she's taken the decision she has. But now there is a real pressure because obviously hundreds more people were moved to the centre yesterday. There now needs to be some kind of decision taken on where to put people immediately, quite quickly, move them into hotel accommodation. And there's discussions about whether that hotel accommodation then involves housing migrants from these centres with people staying there for whatever reasons, holiday business, whatever. And that's quite a tricky situation. Obviously, they have very different demands to people who would ordinarily be staying in these hotels.
And housing people in hotels has been politically very challenging for them to sort of sell to the public, hasn't it?
Yeah, because it costs an enormous amount of money. Labour have been saying, actually, you shouldn't be housing anybody in hotels because, one, it's costly, and two, it proves the system is failing, that people are not being processed quickly enough, that there are massive backlogs in the system, and more resources need to be pushed into dealing with this very quickly to get people out, either taken to a safe country if they are not eligible for asylum here, or if they are eligible for asylum here, giving them the rights that they are allowed to have.
I mean, what is clear about this, and whatever the views on migration, and we've got lots of differing views from our viewers and listeners and people all around the country and different political parties, clearly the system isn't working. I mean, it's not just not working, it's falling apart at the moment. But that requires urgent action as well as a long-term plan.
Yeah, and I think you've got to kind of look at this in different stages, haven't you? Obviously, there are huge numbers of migrants crossing the Channel in small boats. That is a massive crisis. We're expecting to tip into kind of 40,000 so far this year, later this week. That's a huge number. It was 28,000 for the whole of last year. That was higher than the previous year. Nobody's been able to stop this problem. Now, I think Suella Braverman has been in talks with her French counterpart. I think she gets on actually quite well with him. She's a fluent French speaker. They have quite a decent personal relationship, even though she's only been in the job twice in the last few weeks. And actually, she's planning to put more money in if needed and more technology into kind of stopping people making that crossing. And that's the big key issue here, isn't it? How do you stop people making that journey in the first place?
How long is Suella Braverman going to have that job for? Because there are other stories over the weekend about her sort of handling of sensitive information that could unpick her position.
Yeah, I mean, the Home Office, you know, it has long been the death of many careers. It's just surviving in the Home Office takes an awful lot of effort. And to have two big kind of issues dominating your time there, so you've got this issue with Manston, and then you've also got this issue of her personal conduct in the job, whether she, she accidentally sent on personal information, government information to a contact that she did not intend to send that to. And there's also questions about whether MI5 have confidence in her. And so when you've got these two things that come together in a department like the Home Office, it doesn't look good. It's very tricky.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, that whole phone security, and I know she made a mistake, so she claims, with sending this email, but it raises the whole question, along with what we've now learnt about what happened to Liz Truss's phone when she was Foreign Secretary. You know, just how security and data and information devices are handled by anyone in government at the moment.
Yeah, and the former boss of MI6, so Alex Younger, yesterday, he was talking about how actually MPs, they just do not really understand the full implications of mobile phones, anything connected to the internet, whether it is a government phone or a personal phone. You know, if you're in one of those positions, you are going to be tracked. And obviously, Liz Truss, she made a trip to Russia, quite a famous trip where she emulated Margaret Thatcher with a big furry hat. And it's believed that when she went there, she used this personal phone, and obviously the Russians then used that as an opportunity to hack that. And, you know, really, people in the party who've been speaking to me about it say that was quite a schoolboy mistake, really.
Yeah. I mean, she should have known better in a way. But is that down to her, down to the advisors? I mean, I don't know how all these things work. But it does beg the question that all this... Because even if it's just personal information that they're accessing, it gives these countries leverage, doesn't it?
Of course it does. I mean, you know, politicians, they love being on WhatsApp. They love gossiping about each other. They love gossiping to journalists. And any foreign power who has a malign interest can obviously use that to their own advantage. So obviously these are really important matters. And I think actually, you know, for the government to have two separate kind of issues, the phone hacking and the issue of actually passing on information, it is not a great look for Rishi Sunak in his first week in government. It does give him a headache that he really did not need in this first crucial week.
Yeah, it certainly does. Sam, good to talk to you as always. Thanks very much.
Talking about using phones, Elizabeth, very good morning, who's got in touch, says, I work for the NHS. I'm forbidden from using my own phone or email to communicate any information regarding my job. No compromise. We'd lose our job if we use anything but the secure NHS system.
Which makes sense, doesn't it? Makes absolute sense. Well, perhaps that needs to be the situation with anyone in government. Let's get the thoughts of
the Shadow Minister for Immigration.
Here he is. Let's get my notes up. Shadow Minister for Immigration, Stephen Kinnock. Good to see you this morning. Look, well, let's talk about immigration first and foremost in all of this. I mean, even Robert Jenrick says it's an intolerable situation. Forget how we got here. How do we move forward?
Well, it is a situation of complete chaos and incompetence. We've got a massive backlog in the system, and that really is at the heart of the problems. That is what needs to be solved. We need to get the Home Office resourced properly so that they have enough caseworkers and decision makers to get people processed through the system rapidly. If you do that, you will break or you'll contribute to breaking the business model of the people smugglers, because people aren't going to pay a huge amount of money to come to the UK if they know that their claim is going to be processed in 2 or 3 months, and if they are not valid asylum seekers, they'll be removed from the country. What they now know now is, with these massive backlogs in the system where it's taking years to process, that just by getting to the UK, you're guaranteed to be able to stay here for a considerable amount of time. The other thing we need to do is resource the National Crime Agency properly so that they can really go after the people smuggler gangs in partnership with Belgian, French, Dutch authorities and Albanian authorities as well. So there's a number of things that can be done, but instead of that, the government has gone for chasing headlines with this unworkable, unethical and unaffordable Rwanda plan. So Labour would scrap that plan and use those savings to do what I just mentioned. That is the way to get to the heart of the problem, doing the hard yards in government, the hard graft, rather than chasing headlines.
In the immediate short term, what would you do?
Well, the crucial thing to do is quickly get the Home Office resourced properly so that it can quickly start to address this massive backlog that has built up over the last 4 to 5 years. That would take some time, but I think over a period of months, certainly within 12 months, you could make serious inroads into that backlog. That reduces the pressure, that stops reduces the number of people coming over. We also need much better coordination between the Home Office and local authorities so that people whose asylum claims are processed and who are valid asylum seekers can be put into permanent accommodation in local areas and actually then start to be able to work, get leave to remain, contribute to society and integrate. We currently have 37,000 asylum seekers stuck in hotels in this country. It's costing the British taxpayer £6 million a day. That is the wasted money that Labour would redirect into resourcing so we clear the backlog and support local authorities so that we can get people out of these hotels, out of these centres like Manston, and actually get the system working properly. And as I say, that's some of the hard yards that you need to do in government, rather than just chasing headlines and trying to create a hostile environment, which is not working at all, because we were told, of course, that Rwanda, just the threat of being sent to Rwanda would act as a deterrent, but the exact opposite is happening. We're seeing record-breaking, unprecedented numbers of people coming across the channel.
Well, yeah, but that's partly down to the fact that the Rwanda system was sort of, you know, dead on entry, wasn't it? I mean, it got killed off by the lawyers very, very quickly. Look, in all of this, is it fair to say Labour... I mean, you sound like you're taking a harder line on migration or immigration, illegal immigration, than perhaps we've seen before from the Labour Party. Are you listening to the concerns of the British public where, I mean, particularly in communities like Kent, but elsewhere, it's becoming actually a very real problem?
We want an immigration system that is firm and fair. The UK is proudly a country that is a signatory to the Refugee Convention since Churchill. Every Prime Minister since Churchill has said that people fleeing war and persecution and violence should be offered sanctuary in countries like the UK, but other democracies as well across the world have to take their fair share of the responsibility. And that is absolutely Labour policy, and we're proud of that. But it also has to be firm and it has to be competent so that you get people processed quickly, get them through the system. Those who are not valid asylum seekers should not be here. They should be sent back to the first safe country or to the country of origin. And those who are valid asylum seekers should be given leave to remain and given an opportunity to actually come into our society and work and integrate. And we've seen many, just look at Mo Farah as an example of this, a victim of people trafficking who's ended up being one of the greatest athletes our country has ever seen. We should be proud of that, but we need a system that supports both those who are justifiably seeking to come here and supports our local communities, because at the moment we have a system that's completely and utterly broken due to years and years of Tory chaos and incompetence. They've had 12 years to get this right and they have completely failed.
Stephen Kennett, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much. Interesting, a lot of you getting in touch on all of this. Morning Kevin, says it must be dreadful to be in a building where someone throws a petrol firebomb. However, you can feel the tension in this country. And I think that's a fair point, and that's got to be acknowledged. It's not defending what happened at all, but it's got to be acknowledged that there is a tension building in this country. And interestingly, Ivan, you raise an idea that we spoke to Kevin Saunders, is it, who used to be the head of the UK's border force based in Calais. And he came up with this idea as well on the show on Friday or Saturday. Why couldn't the government hire or buy an old cruise liner moored a mile off the coast, use the army for security and staff it with the needed services and assess them for legality on board and send the illegals straight home via regular plane departures?
I mean, it's not dissimilar to Mike's suggestion that says, what's the Royal Navy doing? The ships are out there catching drug runners around the world. What about a major naval exercise in the Channel with the British and French navies?
I mean, look, it might be a quick solution to it, because you say the numbers are forever increasing at the moment and we can't process them. Something is clearly not working. It'd be fascinating to hear. The government's going to have to respond to this in sort of proper terms very quickly. We'll bring you all of those developments as and when it happens.
Right now it's 20 minutes past 8. Let's bring you up to speed with the rest of the stories making headlines today. And it's more than 100 charities who've been urging the Home Secretary to create safer routes for refugees coming to the UK and also to tackle that backlog we've just been talking about in asylum claims. It as almost 1,000 migrants arrived in the UK after crossing the Channel on Saturday. Earlier this month, Suella Braverman said those who make the journey across the Channel will face a ban from claiming asylum.
Luis Inácio Lula da Silva has beaten Jair Bolsonaro in the Brazilian presidential election. It's a real left and right battle there. Lula narrowly defeated his opponent with 50.9% of the vote against 49.1%.
2 men have died after the sound of gunshots was reported in South London. Officers arrived to the scene in Lambeth last night, where 2 men were found injured. Despite the efforts of emergency services, they were pronounced dead at the scene. An investigation's underway.
We're talking toy boys earlier on. Wendy's been in touch. Morning, Wendy. She says, my husband is 4 years younger than me. We've been married for 38 years, but I prefer to be called his cougar. I don't know if 4 years really counts, does it, Wendy?
What justifies a significant age gap then?
I think probably something like 10 years.
10 years.
9, 10 years, maybe.
Even 8 years. I think any sort of the whole way through a school is maybe quite an age gap. If when you were in nursery, they were in, secondary school. 7 years, something like that.
Years. But the older you get, the less age matters. I mean, I think that's a very... I mean, there's a big difference between a 17-year-old and a 24-year-old, but there's no difference between a 40-year-old and a 47-year-old.
No, that's true.
So...
Well, the argument that was being made is that it's become less of a stigma, if it was that much of a stigma before. How kind of important is it that you're at the same life stage and age as your other half, really?
Yeah. If it works for you, it works for you.
I think 4 years, Wendy, is not...
No, Wendy, I think you're all right there.
But
if you want to be a cougar, Wendy, you call yourself a cougar. Go for whatever.
I think many women really would not like to be called that at all.
Why not? Isn't it empowering? I don't know. It's not
For Wendy, it is. That's all that matters.
Yeah, it's all that is. Lee and we're talking about scary movies because it's Halloween tonight, of course. Lee in Salford says, the classic, scary and funny film, Carry On Screaming. That is fabulous. Fenella Fielding, that was as well, wasn't it?
I haven't seen that one.
No. Fenella Fielding, brilliant film.
Now, coming up here on the programme after the break, as major fashion brands launch resale platforms for their products, high street brands basically saying you can buy these items again. We're going to be asking the consumer expert, Kate Hardcastle, if it's actually possible for fast fashion to really go green.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
It is shortly going to be 8:30. In the meantime, here on the programme at 8:45, we've got entrepreneur and musician Levi Roots is going to be in the studio telling us why he believes the Jamaican rugby team can still make it to a World Cup final in the future, despite their loss to Lebanon last night.
And, oh Lord, arachnophobics beware. At 9:15, we're speaking to a man who's built this giant spider from scratch. If you're listening on the radio, best way. He's raising money for charity, but that thing, that's... God, I've got with the shivers already.
Are you scared of spiders?
I don't like spiders.
Really?
It's going for me. That's horrid.
It's kind of got that shiver up your back feeling, really.
Yeah.
Well, for Halloween, it's a spidery sort of day. Please do get involved. Any other things you're scared of?
No,
Snakes?
but I think I might
Mice?
need some of Levi Roots. He does that sauce, doesn't he?
Well, I don't think it solves, like...
No, but I hope he's brought some in. It might warm me up a bit again.
Right, maybe. Get in touch with us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us to @gbnews.
Now, COP27 just around the corner, and Just Stop Oil protests day in, day out. So fast fashion retailers are having to defend themselves against claims that they aren't doing enough to reduce their carbon footprint.
Well, in the last 3 months, retailers like Pretty Little Thing, Zara, Shein, I think that's how you say it, they've all launched resale platforms. But the question lots of consumers have is the quality of their clothing good enough to then resell it? Well, here to give us her sort of tricks and treats to avoid any bad deals is Kate Hardcastle, MBE. Kate, very good morning to you. So if Zara are doing a resale site, just explain to us how it works. Oh, no. Kate, can you hear me? Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well. So just explain to us, we've had a problem with the connection, I think. If Zara are doing a resale site, how does it work?
Look, a lot of organisations very aware of how consumers feel are wanting to make sure they look to be doing their bit when it comes to the environment. And the latest news comes from Zara, who said that they're going to launch a platform for us as individuals, consumers, to resell our Zara goods. They're going to make it simple for us to earn the money by uploading the details. You just upload the pictures. And as well as that initiative, they're running some repair initiatives and ways to donate to the Red Cross. So far, so good when it comes to Zara, but you do start to reflect in terms of what that organisation is and what they're made of. And they are an organisation encouraging hundreds of new lines into stores each week because they're part of the fast fashion cycle. And brands that you've just mentioned, like Zara, Shein, etc., Pretty Young Thing, they are all there because it's about trying to create fast fashion and satisfying a demand that seems to be so incredibly large, so much more than it used to be. Whereas a lot of consumers have returned to things like buying items from secondhand, resellers, the re-commerce element, and actually trying to make do and amend, which is just the idea of looking after what we've got and just generally consuming less. Bearing in mind the fashion market takes 1.5 trillion litres of water to keep going. It's a constant battle against the fact that they are, as a sector, one of the biggest challenges to environmental issues on the planet.
That's fascinating then. So where on the surface it looks like Zara, let's use that as an example, but say there are others, they look like they're sort of going a bit greener by encouraging resale. But actually, if they're getting people to sell between themselves so they don't make any money, but what they're doing is save money there, but we've got new lines in the store, and it's almost a bit like a loyalty scheme, isn't it?
It's going to be really interesting. And I think, actually, Stephen, there'll be high take-up. These are organisations that have the data of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of consumers at their fingertips each week. So I'm not knocking the fact that any organisation's trying to do the right thing. I think it's really important as consumers you understand what that means, though. If you're on the search to just try and support organisations that truly are green, credentials are green and they run through that organisation all the way through, then I think it's always worth doing your research. I think we're going to see more and more, particularly the next week or so as we hear news around COP, we're going to hear more and more about organisations that are suggesting these initiatives are the best, the greenest. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, a lot of it is about the communication and noise created.
Oh. Talk about that. Are you back? Oh no! I tell you what. Well, we got the gist of that from Kate, so we'll leave it there.
I just think if you
noise created in the mic. Guys.
Yeah, I know.
The irony.
The irony to that. But if you buy a dress or a jumper from a fast fashion retailer, you know the lifespan of that garment is a year.
No.
It's not going to be the next 25, 30 years.
No, but it could last you 5 or 10. Surely.
Some of them, if you really wear them, they don't. And if you're then going to resell them, I would be thinking as the person, how many wears am I actually going to get out of this? Is it going to be that once I put it into the washing machine, that's it?
I don't know. Just buy less. Buy less. I hardly ever go clothes shopping. Toy boys have got you all interested. Janet says, I'm in my 70s and my grandmother married a man 10 years younger many years ago, so it's not new to me. John says, I was 19, she was 28. The love of my life, sadly no longer here, but it was over 40 years ago and she still has a place in my heart.
Oh, Mark, I'm 18 years older than my wife and wouldn't change her for the world.
Yeah. And Jill, it says, my husband is 10 years older than me. We had a 25-year trial run and then got married 4 years ago.
Oh, congratulations.
Tried and tested.
After 25 years, you should be sure.
Age gap doesn't matter. You just get on with whatever makes you happy.
Right, stay with us. We're going through the papers again shortly with Dawn Neeson and Christopher Biggins after this.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask, We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
Let's go through the papers. Joining us in the studio again is the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and the actor Christopher Biggins. Very good morning to both of you.
Morning.
Now, Liz Truss, one of her riders was made public over the weekend, and it turns out, maybe according to The Guardian, she was a little bit of a fussy eater.
Well, I know. I mean, I do think these riders are hysterical. I mean, Liz Truss's rider was a double espresso, bagels, and a nice glass of Sauvignon. So, interestingly enough, the bagel, as long as there was no mayonnaise, which I think is ridiculous, because that mayonnaise is the best feature of a bagel, I think. And then they were saying, but also Truss's own espresso machine would follow her wherever she went.
Oh, heaven's sake.
So that's why they had that big van to put that espresso machine when she left 10 Downing Street. And also she likes, as we say, a nice glass of Sauvignon Blanc. What interests me in this article in The Times today, The Guardian rather, is the fact that Guns N' Roses demanded not only shop-bought cookies to prevent fans providing the home-baked variety.
Oh, right.
And also Van Halen insisted that they served M&Ms with the brown ones taken out. Well, of course, you'd want the brown ones taken out, wouldn't you?
Course.
And the other thing which I love is Morrissey demanded a young sapling no less than 4 feet, but no higher than 6 feet in the dressing room. That had to be put there. Katy Perry insisted her drivers do not speak to her. Well, I agree with that. I don't want to talk to my driver. And specifies how fast they should drive and what lane they should drive in.
Oh, right.
And, sorry, I'm going on here. Lady Gaga's rider specifies a piping hot roast chicken as soon as she comes off the stage.
Really?
What?
Yeah, I mean, unbelievable. And then Adele has a strict no American beer rule, of course, no American beer. And the Foo Fighters demand cup of noodles, but only on Wednesdays.
Love it.
It sounds like lots of people have had issues with their security. For us all to know the details of these riders.
Biggins, what would you demand?
I've had no riders at all, but I do insist. I was up in Darlington last week doing a press call for the pantomime, and I do insist on a bed in my dressing room because I like to go to sleep in between performances because we do 2 shows a day. A television because it makes me keep up with what's going on in the outside world, and that's about it, I think, really.
Oh, well, that's not about Dame.
Dame, yes, Dame.
Very good.
Peter Pan.
Stephen, what would you demand?
I really don't know. I mean, the other thing what I've always done is tea or coffee, but mainly tea.
Oh, steady on, Rosie. Come on.
I've never actually been someone of greatest importance to have a list.
What would you demand?
I think, well, just coffee and the papers, definitely. Well, what's on your list?
Well, I'm with Liz Truss and a nice glass of wine, to be honest with you.
But how unreasonable were her demands?
Oh, this is ridiculous. I mean, it's absolute nonsense, isn't it? I mean, it's like, it's hardly really a coffee, a glass of wine and a bagel.
And she doesn't like mayonnaise.
It's not too much.
I mean, it's really... And doesn't like mayonnaise. I mean, it's hardly demanding, is it? I mean, it's hardly surprising the story's also in The Guardian as well, who may or may not think too kindly of Liz Truss.
Yes,
well, lots of negative stories about Liz Truss are coming out now. The timing is not a coincidence.
No, funny enough, that isn't it. There's another story in The Sun today who were keen on Liz Truss at one point, probably not so much now. And the headline, I'm reading this out, it's not my viewpoint, Lefty papers have Liz's hacked text. Now, this is a story that broke at the weekend where Liz Truss's personal mobile phone was used for government business and may have been hacked, and it may be by Putin and the Russian regime. We don't know for sure, but it has been hacked. It was hacked in the summer, and it has been Boris Johnson...
Putin thought he'd give them to The Guardian.
Well, you would do, wouldn't you? You would do. If you were Putin, your first thing to do would be to sell this story to The Guardian and give them the leaked text. But, I mean, so it's moving on the story that, you know, Liz Truss's phone, which is a serious security breach, but that some of those hacked texts, which may or may not reveal what glass of wine she likes, have been passed on to the newspapers in this country. Whether they will ever be able to publish them is another matter. But
yes. Well, I sort of hope not, really, because it's just...
I mean, it's just
I just hope lad is in a whole world of extra trouble.
Absolutely.
Can we have a look at the Mail, Biggins?
Yeah.
Snacking. No, I try not to, but I like a snack.
Well, we all like a snack, and of course that is the problem. I mean, that's what puts the weight on, snacking in between meals. I mean, I think that I always like to have a nice breakfast, to set me up for the day. Then I don't have lunch, and then ideally I would like to eat early in the evening, but I never do because I think we're so used to theatre that we go to see the theatre or we're in a play or what have you, and then we eat after, which of course is disaster. But it is
that's post 10 p.m.-ish kind of time.
Oh yes, I mean it's terrible. I mean really terrible. But there is a lot to be said that in fact, eating less, of course, you're going to lose weight. And if you exercise, it's very simple. But they've brought out today in the Mail the fact that this Professor Tim Spencer insisted that one of the most important things losing weight is not to eat in between meals. And that's very true, I think.
Yeah.
Your mum was right.
Yeah, your mother was right.
All along.
Mothers always are.
Yes.
This is the thing.
But I agree with you. I do like a snack here and there.
There'll be lots of snacking later with trick-or-treating, for sure. Lots of sort of chocolate bars. But, Dawn, tell us, the cost of Halloween in the eye.
Yes, this is a great story, basically. It's Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody out there. And it's not an American import, by the way. We started it and they nicked it off of us. But evidently, we are spending more and more on Halloween as the years go by. In 2001, we only spent 12 million on it as a country in the UK. But the estimated spend this year is £687 million, with the average Brit spending between £50 and £100. And we I know. Come on, chocolate pumpkins.
Average.
Chocolate pumpkins. You've got to admit chocolate pumpkins. And evidently...
Living crisis. I would have gone down.
I want to have some fun. I'm going to
eat
eat a chocolate pumpkin, OK? But we spend, talking of the real-life things, we spend £29 million alone on pumpkins. And it is now the UK supermarket's third biggest sales after Christmas and Easter. So lots of people are, I mean, it's costumes, it's food, it's drink. And you know what? It's a nice thing to have a bit of a party. Look, all the miserable news we've been discussing this morning. I just think if people want to have a little bit of a party and a little bit of a dressing up and do some apple bobbing.
No, I think it should have stayed in. I think it should have stayed in America. I'm afraid we've been taken over by the Americans, and I think it's wrong. I hate people knocking on my door and asking for sweeties. I don't want that. I want to stay in and watch television and be boring. I'm sorry.
So what's your strategy to stop door knockers? No Halloween paraphernalia, I assume, outside the house?
Nothing at all. Nothing at all outside the house.
But it's not American. We started it. It's
Did we?
An ancient Celtic celebration to celebrate the Harvest Festival, and it was started by the Irish and Scottish who then emigrated to America, and the Americans nicked it and obviously made it bigger.
Turned into whatever it is now.
We started it, and good for us.
I'd rather have Christmas. I love Christmas.
Yeah, Christmas is
Well, thankfully, it's not one or the other.
No.
I'm doing both.
I did feel a bit sorry when I was leaving work the other day. There was a lady. What's going on here? There was a lady, an older lady, in a big witch's hat.
Yeah.
And I thought that was Wizard of Oz. And it turns out she was a Chinese tourist with her husband, and she had this bit. And she was looking at her, wondering why nobody else was in costume. So poor lady. I thought it was going to be a bit more American than it actually is.
I'm going dressed up.
Are you?
You're dressed up now.
I'm dressed up now. Thank you very much, darling. Thank you.
Now, let's talk about someone, nursing expert, Eddie Redmayne.
Yes, well, of course, he's just done this Netflix show, which he plays a serial killer in, who was a nurse in a hospital, murdering all his patients. Well, not all of them, but the majority of them. And he said he did do a bit of research for, was it a week, Dawn, I think? Was it?
Yeah, it's a whole... I think he might have stretched it for 2.
Yes, but he did research, and of course has said that it's the hardest job out there, which I think we knew anyway.
Well, yeah, didn't need him to tell us.
No, exactly. I mean, I do think nurses, doctors, anybody in hospitals works unbelievably hard.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very difficult job, very underpaid, unless you're in the private sector, of course, where you earn a fortune.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I remember it was... what's that woman who was in Titanic?
Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet,
yes.
Kate Winslet, because she was...
That woman.
She was that woman. I'm terrible with names. Apologies. Apologies, Miss Winslet. But she was in a film years ago about a pandemic.
Yeah.
When COVID all started, she was giving out advice about what to do in a pandemic.
Was she?
She did a film about it all, which then went to sort of #1, and I watched it, and I was like...
Well, it was a bit spooky, but they were talking about things like the R rate and things, and you thought, oh my gosh, these phrases are now part of our sort of everyday vocabulary. Not anymore.
Well, I played a sex-crazed vicar in Poldark, and I love giving advice on sex to everybody.
Well, not 8:45. Thank you, Biggie.
I think we'll leave it there.
I just had a question for you, Biggie. No, I'm not going to...
Save it for after. Dawn, Biggins.
Before we get taken off here, I'll pull the plug in a minute. Thank you both very much indeed. Good to see you this morning.
Right, it's 8:47. Welcome to Breakfast. Let's just bring you up to date with the other stories making the headlines today, and it's been part of our top story today. More than 100 charities. They're urging the Home Secretary to create safer routes for refugees coming to the UK and also to tackle the backlog in asylum claims. Well, almost 1,000 migrants arrived in the UK after crossing the Channel on Saturday. And earlier this month, you'll remember, Suella Braverman said those who make the journey across the Channel will face a ban from claiming asylum.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has beaten Jair Bolsonaro in the Brazilian presidential election. Lula narrowly defeated his opponent, 50.9% of the vote against 49.1%, but Bolsonaro has, perhaps not unsurprisingly, refused to concede his defeat.
Several children are believed to be among the 134 people killed in India after a suspension bridge collapsed. Now, the bridge was packed with hundreds of sightseers who were celebrating the Diwali festival. The bridge had only just reopened to the public last week after it had been closed for 6 months for renovations. The Reggae Warriors, Jamaica's rugby league squad, became the first ever Caribbean team to make it to the Rugby World Cup finals a few weeks ago.
Yes, sadly, though, they were knocked out by Lebanon last night. But, according to entrepreneur and musician Levi Roots, this momentous achievement is only the beginning. And he joins us in the studio now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Stephen.
Can I just say, first and foremost, by heavens, you look sharp. You look
I love that.
sharp.
That's a great start, Rosie. I gotta say that.
Donuts up.
Brilliant.
Wow.
It's made me like nice and relaxed
I'm
to be
so impressed. Look, I mean, you've been really backing the Reggae Warriors, haven't you, in all of this? And they made history, even sort of getting where they got to.
Yeah, they have. And you know, they probably lost the game on the pitch, but I think they won the people's hearts. You know, I was there at the game yesterday, and it was absolutely amazing to see them even score 2 tries. That was the winning part of it, because I don't think the game yesterday or during the tournament is about today. It's about the future and what they can do for rugby league.
Yeah.
It is still bitterly disappointing, though, not to be progressing any further.
Yeah.
Just tell us what it was like watching that and see it all slightly unfold.
Well, I think we knew that this is going to be difficult for Jamaica, because I think for me, when I was a kid, if you throw me a rugby ball, I'd be saying, pass me the pump, let me blow it up and make it round.
Yeah.
Because no one had played rugby when I was quite young in Jamaica. So it's great to see the lads in Jamaica who are actually playing on concrete. They're using PVC's poles to tape that onto the goalpost of soccer goalpost to make that into rugby. So for them to qualify for this, the World Cup finals of rugby league is absolutely amazing. So watching the team was just seeing the inspiration and feeling the inspiration that they brought to the game. And I think everyone, even the Lebanon supporters, were cheering Jamaica when they scored their 2 tries.
There's something about Jamaica, and actually a lot of Caribbean nations, somehow, there seems to be a joyous quality to the people of the Caribbean, that when they're getting stuck into something which hasn't happened before, and it does bring a pleasure. You want to wish them well somehow.
Yes, absolutely. It's called the talawa. We in Jamaican say it's our superpower.
Right.
And all Jamaicans know about the talawa. It's that thing saying that we're small, but we're strong, we're stoic, and we're resilient, but gentle at the same time. And I think this is what people like Usain Bolt uses when he's on the track. And I try to install this into the rugby league team, because a lot of these lads are actually British lads, who are part of the diaspora. Moms and dads are Jamaican. And I think it's taken a little bit of time for them to feel what it is to be Jamaica, to get that Talawa feel. And it was certainly on the field yesterday when they scored their 2 tries. It was absolutely amazing.
And you've been part of the sort of inspiration story by writing this single.
I did One Dream, One Team. You know, again, it was about trying for them to understand what it is to be Jamaican. I wrote about the Jamaican national anthem. I wrote about Out of Many One People, which is part of the coat of arms. Because a lot of these lads are actually, as says, born here. So it was important for them to feel that they're playing, not just for themselves, but they're playing for Jamaica. And I think they really did that. It was absolutely, and scored against New Zealand as well in the last round, which is the most amazing thing that there is. Yeah.
That's got to be sweet. How important is it for someone like you to get involved in all this? Because I mean, your turnaround story, from sort of humble beginnings, if I can put it that way, perhaps a sort of bit of a troubled youth and what have you, to become who you are and this huge name and hugely successful. I mean, that must be very inspirational for people to then to take your guidance.
Well, I remember when I was about to go on Dragons Den to make my fame, and I said, I want to be me. I wanted to take the guitar. I wanted to put music and food together. Everybody said, no, Levi, don't take the guitar. It's not about, it's not X Factor or anything. This is a show about business and enterprise. But I've always said that it's easier when you're you, when you are the true you. And that's why I went as me and I sang on the show. And I think for these boys, I said to them, be yourself. And writing the song was just trying to help them, for them to feel that this is not about winning the game. It's about winning the hearts of the people. And I really think they did that.
And your pitch, so many of us will remember it, was a real performance, wasn't it?
But that's really interesting, I think, because it's a message for life, isn't it, about authenticity.
Yeah.
Which is useful for even people in our job, where obviously it's almost, there's an element of acting, but it's really important if you want to connect to people to be authentic.
Yeah, and you've got to start somewhere. As I said, these lads don't have any heroes in rugby for them. I mean, when I was growing up, I can only think of Hilary Lee, Martin Afire, and Jason Robinson. As a black kid growing up by then, I couldn't think of any other rugby league players. So it was really, important for me to get involved in it, to be able to say, OK, I'll put a bit of money in there and sponsor the team, but it's not just about that. It's about the inspiration and staying with them. So I'm in it for the long term, and I can't wait for the next 3 or 4 years and see where Jamaican Rugby League goes.
Yeah, it'll be heading in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Really good to see you, Levi, this morning. Thank you very much indeed. If you want to leave that jacket behind, feel free, because I think I might just want that. Very nice. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. You're here on Breakfast on GB News. After the break, we're going to be speaking to the Environment Minister, Mark Spencer, as Rishi Sunak faces pressure to attend the COP27 Climate Summit. Should he go? You can let us know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk. That's after the weather.
Well, the UK is shaping up like this today. Dry for many with sunny spells across the country, but sadly wet and windy in the west. Here are the details.
Well, starting off in the southwest, it's going to be calm around lunchtime with bursts of sunshine. Later, some rain is going to arrive and carry on late into the evening.
Well, in the southeast, it's going to be drier with some fine clouds setting in the afternoon. We also expect warmer temperatures again, at least for this time of year.
Now, in Wales, there's potentially going to be the odd shower here and there, but it should be mostly fine and dry. That warm spell will last throughout the morning and into the afternoon.
Moving on to the Midlands for you, plenty of fine weather actually, 1 or 2 sunny breaks as well. Again, unseasonably warm, though temperatures not quite as high as we saw over the weekend.
It's a similar picture for the northeast of England, with sunny spells for much of the day. It's going to get a little bit blustery at times, but thankfully will still be warm for those out and about.
Now, heavy rain will have pushed in across western parts of Scotland by mid-morning. It's going to be drier further east, albeit with some showers, before the persistent rain arrives a little bit later on.
Now, meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, expect a wet and windy day. The rain's going to be heavy at times, leading to the risk of localised flooding, as well as some difficult driving conditions.
So, for most, the rain will push eastwards across the UK, further showery rain feeding in from the south. And that's how your weather's looking today.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamonn Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank and, of course, fun. Every Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Every Saturday at 2 o'clock, join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain. I'm not afraid to give you a platform and say it how it is.
Come on, make the case. Something like this is very, very important to people.
And we're always up for a laugh on this show.
God, honestly, you'd think there were no problems in the world.
Real Britain, every Saturday on GB News.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The Immigration Minister calls the situation in Kent intolerable after a firebomb attack on a migrant processing centre in Dover.
Good morning. It's 9 o'clock. It's Monday, the 31st of October. Happy Halloween. And welcome to Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Rosie.
Right, well, here's what's leading the news this morning. The Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, visited Dover last night following a firebomb attack on a Border Force migrant centre. Kent police have confirmed that 2 people were injured.
The government's under pressure to open an investigation into allegations that Liz Truss's phone was hacked when she was Foreign Secretary. Private messages, including about the war in Ukraine, reportedly fell into foreign hands.
And it's the 31st of October today.
Lord, that thing.
If you're listening on the radio, a rather large spider will be appearing on the programme Not Alive. We're going to Kent, where one resident has erected a giant Harry Potter style. What was the Harry Potter huge... It begins with A, Aragog. Thank you very much to our producer, Charlie, who's just told me. This huge spider is now in front of his house for Halloween. why, despite the scariness, we promise it's all in for a good cause. We'll find out more shortly.
I mean, that's the stuff of nightmares. If you're on the radio,
Do you remember earlier when you said MPs could be a little bit dramatic, Stephen?
Yeah. Oh,
No,
all right, yeah. Fair enough. Normally, when we show pictures, I say, if you're listening on the radio, download the app, have a look, or have a look on YouTube, whatever. With this one, don't. Just don't. Enjoy the fact you can't see it, because it's horrific.
I think it's fine. Well, get in touch if you're celebrating Halloween in particular. How? Why? Are you anti-trick-or-treaters like Christopher Piggins, who basically says, do not knock here? Or are you throwing yourself into it? gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can drop us a tweet to @gbnews.
Well, let's kick off with the news that Kent Police are continuing their investigation into an attack on a Home Office migrant centre. Petrol bombs were thrown at the facility yesterday before the suspect behind the attack was found dead nearby with a further device in his vehicle.
Well, suspected migrants were being held at the Home Office site, have now been moved to the Manston Migrant Processing Centre.
Well, the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, went to the site at Manston yesterday. He called the current situation intolerable.
Well, let's find out more and go to Dover, where our Home and Security Editor Mark White is there. Mark, just explain to us what happened over the weekend and what situation the Home Office is in now to try and deal with what is looking like a looming emergency.
Well, the Home Office and the Home Secretary is under intense pressure, but to be honest, this pressure has been building for many, many months now, years, because this is a situation with migrants coming across the Channel that has only grown year on year, and I'm expecting that later this morning we will hit 40,000 people who have crossed the English Channel so far this year. Where I am at the moment is at the perimeter fence to this processing centre here. This was opened just recently, actually, as the other processing centre here at Dover Harbour was just not big enough to deal with the numbers coming over. So they spent a couple of £1 million on this, big marquees, proper perimeter fence around it to be a bit more secure and to be away from the prying eyes of the media as well. And that's been up and running a few months now. And it was here that we saw this firebomb attack take place. I'm just going to walk across the road here and just show you. It was a vehicle that came round here, a white Seat, came down the road from Dover itself, down into the harbour, down here to the Western Jetfoil and to this perimeter fence. At that point, the man inside threw 2, possibly 3 incendiary devices that had fireworks lit and attached to them. You can see here at the perimeter fence where that fire ignited. Very dramatic images, of course, of the security personnel who were here, who came out with fire extinguishers to try to get control of that blaze. They brought it under control very quickly. We're told that a couple of people, though, did suffer minor injuries, according to Kent Police. Then the attacker, who was seen by a Reuters photographer, drove his vehicle to a petrol station, which is about 200-300 metres from here. There, we're told he took his own life. Very distressing scenes that the Reuters photographer witnessed at that time. The motive for this firebomb attack, we don't know what the motive was, but of course it comes at a time of enormous pressure and public disquiet at the number of people who just continue to come across the English Channel.
OK, Mark, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's talk to Food Minister Mark Spencer, who also joins us this morning. Minister, good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. I've been looking at some of the comments you've already said on your media round this morning, talking about immigration and how people are dealt with, because what's causing a lot of concern is the fact that people have been moved from Dover to Manston, which was already vastly overcrowded and running hugely beyond its timescale of keeping people for 24 hours only. You've said we've got to find a way of dealing with people compassionately and looking after them, as well as processing them as quickly as possible. Well, they're not being looked after compassionately at Manston, are they? That's the big problem.
No, actually the accommodation there is quite reasonable. They've got access to showers, to medical facilities, to to food, and so what matters actually is getting them processed as quickly as possible. And we're talking about people who've been exploited, who've literally been had their life savings taken off them, put on an unseaworthy craft, and pushed across the channel by unscrupulous people who are exploiting them. And we have a responsibility to look after them, to process them quickly, and to work out who's a genuine asylum seeker and who should be returned to a safe country.
I mean, Manston's got a capacity of 1,000, 1,500 at a push. And they're meant to stay there for 24 hours. Mark White, who you just heard there, spoke to a whistleblower on Saturday who works there, saying there's now about 4,000, plus the 700 who've been shipped in overnight. And there's outbreaks of diphtheria, scabies, other health conditions, people sleeping on cardboard, on concrete floors. How's that the right way to be dealing with this?
So that's not my understanding. Is actually that people presented with diphtheria and were treated by the medical facilities there. That was not an outbreak of diphtheria within the facility. That's people landing on our shores with that condition and being treated by our medical teams there to help and support them. So we then need to process these people as quickly as possible, as you identify. That's what we're attempting to do. But there is a plan where we're working with local authorities. We've invested over £20 million with our local authorities up and down the country to accommodate people in different places around the UK. But the answer is a multiple choice question, if you like. So we need to get on with the Rwanda plan. We need to make sure we break the business model of those people coming across the channel exploiting people, and we need to process them at the other end and make sure we get to the right conclusions as quickly as possible.
When they're here in the UK, why is the processing taking so long?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite complicated to work out, because obviously these people sometimes come without any documentation, so you've got to work out where they've come from, how old they are, and their background, and it's quite difficult to process and verify all of that information. That is quite a challenge, but that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to expedite and do as quickly as possible. But it's not quite as easy as, here is individual A, and all of that information is presented and documented. That's not how people turn up on our shores.
To speed that process up, so you need to define and understand why it's taking so long. Is it that you need more people, more accommodation? What is it?
Yeah. So that's exactly what the Home Office is focused on right now. That's why the Home Secretary is in the Home Office dealing with those challenges as we speak. We want to get through this process as quickly as possible. We want to break that model of people stealing their life savings and putting their lives in danger. And we want to try and do that as quickly as physically deliverable.
I mean, what was interesting, we spoke to Stephen Kinnock, the Shadow Immigration Minister, a little bit earlier on, and look, to be perfectly fair, he came up with some pretty solid suggestions. I mean, like you saying, well, you need to increase the numbers, increase the processing capacity, but saying, well, scrap Rwanda, that doesn't seem to have had much of a deterrent effect. Scrap that and use the money to actually get that processing done faster.
Well, there is no silver bullet here, and to suggest there is a silver bullet is misleading. It's a very complicated system that we're addressing, and we need a multiple answer to that, and we'll continue to. I think Rwanda is part of that solution, but there are other answers which we're delivering at the same time.
Why did Suella Braverman decide to move those people from Dover to Manston when we knew there wasn't enough space to look after them all safely?
Well, because, as you saw, there was a terrible firebomb. Those people had to be moved from Dover rapidly. They needed to go somewhere secure and safe, and Manston was the best option at this moment in time to look after them. We're talking about very vulnerable people here who are being exploited. And I mean, actually, in the United Kingdom, we've got a fantastic track record of being the most compassionate country anywhere in the world. We've taken people from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Hong Kong, from Ukraine. It's no surprise that people want to come here because we're such a compassionate and caring country. But we need to develop systems that are robust enough and quick enough to be able to deal with them.
We're talking about being compassionate and caring. We need to look after our own people here. I mean, you'll be very, very well aware of that with the cost of living crisis. I know one thing the government's looking at is improving food security and making our crops a bit more hardy over here, if you like, which, I mean, hopefully, ultimately, would bring prices down as well. How would that work?
Yeah. Well, so we're just concluding the gene editing bill in Parliament today. That's new technology which allows us to basically develop plants that, you know, we might want to develop traits which make the plant taller or shorter or better root systems. It means we'll end up with plants that are more resistant to disease or more resistant to pests and produce more food. I think that's good news for our farmers, and it's actually a great benefit of Brexit that we can go faster than the EU and make the UK a centre for agricultural innovation and excellence.
Does this leave us in terms? I mean, does this leave us with genetically modified food? I mean, remember last time that came to the fore. It's quite a few years ago now, but it was all genetically modified soya that caused a lot of uproar.
So this is very much different. So this is talking about speeding up the process of traditional plant breeding. So we used to get a little paintbrush, literally, and brush pollen from one plant to another. But now we can do it in a laboratory. So we can take traits that we want to transfer from one plant to another plant and make it better to, you know, resist a disease or grow a little bit shorter or taller or basically produce more food. That will mean we can reduce the amount of pesticides we're using and artificial fertilizers in the long term and increase the amount of yield that we're producing. It also frees up land for more environmental schemes and greater biodiversity. You know, I think it's a win-win.
It's impossible to divorce the idea and the concept of food security from climate change. And we know COP27 is coming up and the Prime Minister said he's not going to attend. Is that the right decision?
Well, the Prime Minister's got a huge inbox. You know, he's literally coming to number 10 with some big challenges, as we've talked about already this morning. I think he needs to be focused on that inbox and dealing with that. I know that he's enormously sympathetic to the ambitions of COP, and we will be sending serious ministers out there and big hitters to take part in that conference. And again, we should be very proud. In the UK, we've been world leading in this field. And Alex Sharma, as the president of COP, has led us in the right direction. We need to continue to go in that direction and lead the world, and there'll be some big hitters going out to COP to make sure the UK plays its part.
Mr. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. All right, all the best.
It's coming up to 14 minutes past 9. Let us know what you think about that. It seems often we were getting there. Lots of conversation about that there would be a process in place for how to handle the situation of the migrants crossing the channel, but not actually the detail on what that process was.
Well, no. I suppose you've got to be fair and say it's not his brief. But, you know, there's clearly an emerging crisis with this that is going to have to be looked at pretty sharpish. Anyway, let us know what you think. gbviews@gbnews.uk. On the rest of it, though, pretty straight talker, isn't he?
I thought so, yeah.
Which is what you want of a politician. Let's be honest, as was Stephen Kinnock earlier on. You know, he was pretty impressive as well. So whichever way you swing on politics, I think we've got it all covered this morning. Let's bring you up to date with some of the headlines then. And political decision-making during the pandemic is going to be focused on during the second preliminary hearing of the COVID inquiry. More details are expected to emerge on how political decisions were made during the period with restrictions. Evidence sessions start next year.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has beaten Jair Bolsonaro in the Brazilian presidential election. Lula narrowly defeated his opponent with a 50.9% of the vote. And Bolsonaro has, not at this point, said, OK, I concede.
Staff at the Co-op will be able to get paid time off for fertility treatments. A new policy will provide paid leave for the retailer's employees to attend medical appointments for treatments, including if you're using a surrogate. It's just occurred to me that you're wearing orange. Was that deliberately for Halloween, to look like a pumpkin? Is it not?
No, actually, it wasn't. We've got quite a lot of orange behind us already. We're an orange set. No, orange is actually my favourite colour, so...
Oh, there you go. There you
I
go.
could have been twinning with the pumpkins. There'll be lots
could have
out
been.
tonight.
There will.
You might have been trick-or-treating over the weekend. You might have been shutting all the curtains and pretending you're not in, like someone we had on the programme earlier. But coming up, we are going to be getting into the Halloween spirit. I have to say, as a child, we never celebrated it at all. I never went trick-or-treating. But we're really getting into the spirit now. One house has built a giant spider to raise money for charity. We'll be getting a glimpse after the break.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales,
and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio, and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News. .20, happy Halloween. And if you're local to Kent, you may have walked past one house which has really got into the spooky spirit.
Kieran's King Halloween's plays have been bringing joy, probably maybe to me, and terror, to be honest, Stephen, to the community for many years, but also doing some good too. It's all to raise money for a children's hospice.
Well, let's head over there now, should we? Kieran joins us. Is that Hagrid? Hello, Hagrid. How are you doing?
You're all right. You're all right, how are you? Nice to see you.
That's not too bad, that impression.
It's not bad. Look, show us what you've done there, because it frankly scares the life out of me.
Right, so yeah, made the big one this year, the big spider. Then we've got the little one was last year's spider. Done all the webbing, the fencing, the skeletons, made all them. And then during the night it's all lit up, smoke machines. And we have the holographics on the side of the house. And a few characters walking around greeting people.
Right, how long did it take just to make the one really big spider?
That was actually quite easy. That was 2 weeks. Because I learned all my mistakes last year on the slightly smaller one.
Oh, what mistakes?
Just the general building process of how to put it all together, the dimensions and the building materials. Last year I used expanding foam, which didn't quite work.
I tell you what, it's pretty scary stuff, and you're raising a lot of money for charity. It's going to Demelza Hospice, isn't it? Why are you supporting Demelza?
Yep. Because they're very, very local, and it all started a few years ago with a few friends out on the bikes. We've done a bike ride to raise money for charity, so it's just sort of spurred on from there. I never intended to set out to raise for charity, just so many people turned up last year and offered to donate. But what a great cause to go towards, because Demelza rely on 88% of donations for their funding.
Some people might be donating to you so that you could take it down. What would be the biggest bid that would make you pull down the spider?
Yeah, I don't know where I'm going to put him, so we'll figure that out. He's not going to fit in the loft.
No, I was just thinking that.
You
what
should
on earth are you going
auction
to do
him
with
off.
him? Yeah, but then you have to build something else next year.
That's true.
It's already on the go. That is. I've already thought about it. I've got the plan.
Oh,
all right.
Can you
very
tell
good.
us?
Yeah, it's all secret though.
Oh.
Should not have said that. So.
I tell you what though, it looks good enough. You could take it round to the old Harry Potter exhibition thing, because it looks as good as the ones in there, and they're scary as well. Are you a big Harry Potter fan?
I do like Harry Potter, yeah, and Hagrid is my favourite. So yeah.
How long are you going to keep it up for?
It'll come down. It's been up for a week now already. I think the neighbours are pretty sick of it by now. We'll get tonight done. Tonight will be the last night, and then we'll pack it all the way tomorrow.
Oh. Well, I hope you've raised plenty of money for charity. I'm sure you have. It's really great to see you, Kieran.
Yes. No, thank you.
And obviously supporting hospices is a great thing too. Hospices do a lot of stuff and a lot of lottery tickets and all sorts of things that they do now because they are so reliant on donations just to keep going, especially at the moment.
Brilliant to use Halloween as an opportunity for, fundraising rather than just fear.
Yes, yeah, I have to say that is pretty scary as far as I'm concerned. Because it's Halloween, we're saying we're going to watch a scary movie tonight. John, maybe, he says the worst Halloween film I watched was my wedding video.
Oh no, John!
I take it that didn't end well then, John. At least if it didn't, it's about to.
What
there
about
you go.
John's poor ex-other half?
I know. Well, look, keep your thoughts coming through throughout the day. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Breakfast will be back tomorrow, but up next, it's Tom Harwood with The Briefing.
Well, the UK is shaping up like this today. Dry for many with sunny spells across the country, but sadly wet and windy in the west. Here are the details.
Well, starting off in the southwest, it's going to be calm around lunchtime with bursts of sunshine. Later, some rain is going to arrive and carry on late into the evening.
Well, in the southeast, it's going to be drier with some fine clouds setting in the afternoon. We also expect warmer temperatures again, at least for this time of year.
Now, in Wales, there's potentially going to be the odd shower here and there, but it should be mostly fine and dry. That warm spell will last throughout the morning and into the afternoon.
Moving on to the Midlands for you, plenty of fine weather actually, 1 or 2 sunny breaks as well. Again, unseasonably warm, though temperatures not quite as high as we saw over the weekend.
It's a similar picture for the northeast of England, with sunny spells for much of the day. It's going to get a little bit blustery at times, but thankfully will still be warm for those out and about.
Now, heavy rain will have pushed in across western parts of Scotland by mid-morning. It's going to be drier further east, albeit with some showers, before the persistent rain arrives a little bit later on.
Now, meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, expect a wet and windy day. The rain's going to be heavy at times, leading to the risk of localised flooding, as well as some difficult driving conditions.
So, for most, the rain will push eastwards across the UK, further showery rain feeding in from the south. And that's how you weather.